Thank you, everyone, for coming onto the call, Exiting Babylon, Status Correction. We are going through many things, learning how to correct our status and remove the presumptions that we are the things that we've been put into through deceit in the birth certificate and the legal entity name. And so tonight we have Ken Dost on, and Ken Dost has been doing this kind of study for many years, and he has done like a reverse engineering of how these things work. And he's nailed down the patenting and copyright procedures that have been used, and he's just done a tremendous amount of work to help free everyone, and he's got quite a history here, and a lot of it I'm not completely sure about, but I do believe that he's got a degree in architecture, and you can certainly see the architecture in his work. So, Ken Dost, if you're out there.
There I is. I'm here.
All right.
How are you?
Well, very good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. We're going to have fun tonight.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Everybody's excited. So I know it's going to be a great night. There were a lot of emails that went out, so probably going to be a lot of people on the call. But I'd ask you to hold your questions or comments until we open the floor up for those kinds of things. I like to give Ken the floor and just let him run with it. He does a wonderful job.
Just wind me up. Let me go.
So, like I said, you guys, get your pens and papers ready because we're going to let Ken go here. And thank you again for coming onto the call, Exiting Babylon, Status Correction. And with that, Ken?
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. This is going to be a good night. This is going to be a very, very good night because we're at the end run here of everything. Thank you for everybody being on. I remember years ago when I first started this escapade, or this journey, if you will, I came across an article that was written by an accountant that worked for Wells Fargo, and this accountant was he was pointing out the dire nature of things, that the future was in great peril, and I had a laugh. For the reason why was because his reason for it was that the old money estates were drying up, and that it would be a great tragedy for us as a society to let all this old money go dry, and all these people being put in the poorhouse. He said, well, we got to do something about this. We can't let that happen. And I had to laugh at that because this was written back in, I believe it was around 1989. So, and when I read this, it was, I don't know, 2006, 7, 8 maybe. And
Hey, Kim, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you move a little closer to your mic? You sound like you're just a little bit away from it.
Okay, well, I'm right on top of it.
Okay.
I am right on top of it. I'll speak a little bit louder.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, sir. Right there. Perfect.
Okay. So reading this was kind of funny. I mean, it was really hard to read this in 2007, 2008, somewhere thereabouts. Maybe about 2009. And this was kind of in the beginning of all this research and in the patents and whatnot when I was first discovering all these things. But here it is. This accountant's telling us that we have to take care of the old money. And they certainly took care of the old money because they fixed it so not only was the old money doing well, but anybody who had any knowledge of these patents or anything of intellectual properties has prospered very, very well. So here we are years later, and unwinding this whole process of everything that's gone on, and it all comes down to accounting. It comes down to public-private, which is basically left side of the books and right side of the books, and bringing these sides of the books together. For many years, we have gone down paths We have looked for things. We have tried to find secret formulas to get our remedy. We have gone the birth certificate route. We have killed that thing to death many times over. And we're going to talk about that tonight too, because a lot of these issues of the birth certificate we can throw out the door. We can throw it out the window because it really doesn't matter in the 21st century, and it really doesn't matter for one reason. And the reason for why it doesn't matter is everything that we're dealing with here, and this may sound ridiculous, but when you understand the full depth of it, it's not. Everything that we're dealing with here is self-authentication, self-certification. And this was all a result of, we can thank the Federal Reserve for this, for allowing the banks to operate freely without any kind of laws or any kind of regulations overseeing what they were doing, and, of course, protecting any lines of businesses that attached to a national association. So what we have here is we've got a system of total self-authentication. And so the birth certificate really doesn't really matter insofar as all the accounts that are attached to it. It's not because you're not going to cash in your birth certificate and have your tens of millions of dollars or $100 million or limitless credit line. That's not the birth certificate. That's not the point of the birth certificate. The point of the birth certificate is mainly because they're selling them every day. The county, Columbia County here, they have a press and they have all the paper that they can print off the security birth certificates all day long, and they're selling them. They're selling them out of every single county. So it doesn't matter who prints it off, it's being sold. Now, when you go in and make that claim on it, yes, you're basically taking, you're self-authenticating yourself. You're saying, this is me. And that's what all this comes down to. It comes down to capturing your identity. Everything comes down to taking control of your identity. That's the most important thing that we're dealing with here. And there's a lot of ways that we're going about this. We're going about this in many ways in the county, in the state, legal name change, so on and so forth. But there's one absolute given condition that must be met. We have to be able to enforce these things. It's all well and good to be able to take your name back, or to put a no trespass sign up in your house, or to be able to prevent them from foreclosing your house, or putting them off from foreclosing on your house. That's all well and good. But at some point in time, you got to say, okay, it's time to collect. It's time to collect on these things. How do we collect on it? Okay, so we've got a lot of different ways and a lot of different methods and manners out there that is navigating the public-private side. And we're going through, and basically a lot of people are what I call throwing paperwork into a black hole and hoping that it sticks. And in some cases it's sticking. In some cases it's not. But the one given here is that we're not getting any phone calls or really any conversation with the people that we should be speaking with, which is Treasury. So, we're navigating this private side of the coin. I had a person, I don't know, about a month ago, maybe less than that. I call him Pretty Boy because he's a lot more handsome than I am, but I won't mention his name. But he berated me for being too boisterous and too audacious in the manner that I speak. And he's told me that you got to be quiet about these things. You can't talk about these things. These things are private, and it takes about a year to be able to navigate all these waters. Well, what waters are you navigating? And everybody says, well, I'm following Boris, I'm following whomever, whomever guru they're following out there. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not going to say that they're good. In some cases, it works out quite well. Rob Ryder, a lot of people follow him, and it works out quite well. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But here's the problem, though. The problem with it is we're putting our faith on a dart that's sticking to the wall, and we're hoping that that's going to work. And in some cases it's not. Some cases it is, and in some cases people are going to jail. And the people that are going to jail have done things incorrectly, as I've come to find out. I've navigated this for a decade now, and I've taken many paths. I went down the road of the Constitutionalists. I went down the road of many of these other gurus, I'm going to call them, and many of those paths especially on the birth certificate path, I found my head spinning. I mean, I would get into this information, and I would get so damn depressed, and my head would just be so spinning on this stuff. It's like, what the hell? Who do you believe? What do you believe? What is it? What is it not? So I decided to abandon that. And I've got I think I've had a pretty good gut instinct on these things. So far I have. Insofar as the Constitutionalists are concerned, I went that way with Bundy's, and I was on that path with him for a little while. I mean, I wasn't a diehard of that movement at all. As a matter of fact, when I went down to Burns, I made it very clear that I was not a Constitutionalist. I was not a militia person. I was down there in peace. Because I don't want to subscribe myself to any kind of a movement of that nature. But something was wrong about it. Something didn't feel right about it. My gut instinct told me, no, something's not right about that. And it proved itself to be wrong when I came across the 1790 Copyright Act. I mean, that really, really put everything in place for me as far as all my research is concerned. It really locked things in. And but there were a couple of little things that, were still empty out there, not connected. And that was, how do we get remedy? What is the ticket to remedy? And how do we get it? And when you're dealing with something we're dealing with here, we're dealing with a stolen identity. Everything that's happening is through a stolen signature, a stolen name, and it's more than life-death issues. It's more than birth certificate issues. It's more than we've gone down this path of the mother's birth canal, and and at the end of the day, and I'm sorry to say this, and I don't want to be insulting to anybody about this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter for shit. It doesn't, because at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is processes in commerce. We're dealing with processes to status. We're dealing with issues of paperwork. So when we find remedy and we talk about equity, for a while there, I was on the exclusive equity side of the coin. I was very much so. I'm very much on the side of that, with the exception of you cannot get exclusive remedy through the county or state probate courts. You can't do it because they're crooked. The judges get a take of it. They're biased, and this is substantiated by two Supreme Court cases. I believe in a few years back. It was with. You got to help me out on this. Because I can't remember the name of the gal. Who's the big-boobed woman from Playboy Bunny that married the real wealthy guy that died? What's the name of that person? Smith? Anna Nicole Smith. Anna Nicole Smith, if you recall her. She married that real wealthy guy who was 80 years old. He passed away. She left everything to her. His kids came back and took it to probate and said, no way, where's our inheritance? And it went through the court system, and as a matter of fact, it made up to the Supreme Court twice. And the Supreme Court said that the state judges, state probate should have nothing whatsoever to do with any of these cases because the judges are biased. It should be a federal court, an Article III court, should not go through probate at all. So that tells me something. That tells me something right there, and it really does tell you a lot when we're dealing with the issues that we're dealing with. I for a while there, and I did file the paperwork with a county court here, in exclusive equity. I filed the Treaty of Amity, and I filed all that stuff, and I did the non-UCC, which in my case was an equity bill essentially to HSBC's attorney, which she flatly came back with an email and said, I'm not going to abide by this nonsense, and it went nowhere. And this was kind of loosely formed around the research of Eric John Phelps out of Pennsylvania, who was charging, thank God I didn't pay for those classes. I never would. I feel sorry for anybody that has paid for classes that has gotten nothing out of it. I believe he was charging $2,000 to how to exercise exclusive equity, and As I understood, he succeeded in getting his decree from out of Pennsylvania, but because he made claims that basically spit on the United States, spit on the federal government, when he came back to say that he wanted access to his accounts, the court said, ain't going to happen. and again, this goes back to the fact that we missed the 1790 Copyright Act, which is very, very important because the 1790 Copyright Act tells us that we're dealing with our common law copyright, our name, and that the government essentially has proprietary ownership or overseer, if you will, of maps, periodicals, and surveys. And, of course, we're dealing with county records, IRS records, state records, so on and so forth. So they have proprietary issues over that, rights over that. And because we are basically incompetence, adult incompetence, we have to abide by codes and statutes, so we're the little children of these codes and statutes. Come to find out, this is something very interesting that is very, very noteworthy because it deals exactly with the issues that we're dealing with. I came across an act here, I believe it was 1895. It was the General Allotments Act, and it had to do with territories, Indian territories, and Indians being given land and parcels of land. And it's a real interesting way they set it up because this is almost like Blackacre back in the Reconstruction period. I mean, it's almost actually it is the exact same thing. What they did was they set up trusts that were attached to these lands that the Indians were given under this act, and when the Indians, because of course they did because they were forced into it, failing on their properties, and the properties were taken back. They were taken back. Why? Because they were deemed as incompetent, and the trust paid out, and the trust kept growing and paying out to the member subscribers, so to speak, which is the government and the bankers and the brokers and the lawyers and so on and so forth. But under this Allotment Act, when fee simple is achieved, the trust liquidates, and you have a allodial title, which gets you a patent. And that land patent that everybody is so desperate to find can be had through the Department of the Interior. So there's where your land patents are. Now, through this General Allotments Act, now that part of the act, part of that act has been repealed. Two parts of the act have been repealed, but a couple parts still survive. The one part that survives has to do with rolling stock and railroads, which is very interesting because with the things we're going to be talking about here shortly, I have specifically tied into the railroads and pensions for railroad employees, which has to do with land and the connection to land. And the second part of that act that still pertains to today has to do with right-of-ways. Which is so. These are things that are very interesting, and these are things that are factual that tie together with everything that we're talking about here. Now,
and I need to interrupt you for a minute.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry to do this. Okay, we have a lot of people on the call, and a lot are coming in. And while we want everybody that can come on to the call to go ahead and come on, because we work transparently. We do not accept calls that are not identified, so please unidentified.
I don't give a damn. Let them listen. I don't care if bankers and lawyers. Let them listen. I don't care. Let them listen. Let them see what's coming.
Well, they do take a chance of getting booted by the moderator. So I'm just letting you guys know that you should unblock your call. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. I'm glad you did. I needed a drink. There is a particular act, I forgot what it was right now. I'll come back to that. I'll remember it in a minute. What I want to really get into tonight is I want to get into the solutions, and we do have the solutions now. What we have talked about, what we've learned, if you've been following me, you know that I talk about, and I talk quite a bit about the Merged Nations Bank Agreement. And I also talk about the fact that we're dealing with common law copyrights and our identity. which is exactly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the theft of our identity. And over 100 million people, actually, which would probably equate out to about 400 million by the time you take in a husband and wife, and their kids, that were all lured into these so-called Fannie and Freddie mortgage loans, which we can prove unequivocally beyond any preponderance, times 10, that there does not exist a mortgage loan. It never existed. It's a lease option is what it is. It's a leaseback transaction to which they stole your identity, they stole your legal ownership of a piece of property, and they sold it many times over, and they pocketed it. They pocketed all the equity, and they kept the books separate so that they left the debt receivable on the books. And so these are the things that we're fighting. We know that we cannot go through the court system because we know the court system is rigged. Why is the court system rigged? It's rigged because of a system of standards. Let me get this right now. A voluntary system of standards and procedures that are ISO insurance services insurance service offices, I believe, ISO standards that are all these codes and statutes that are Treasury, that is IRS, that is all your agencies operate on these standard procedures that we apparently volunteered for. But we didn't. We were incorporated by reference. And one of the ways that we were incorporated by reference was through the Merged Nations Bank Agreement when we put our signatures on that Fannie and Freddie document. We were hoodwinked on a level that it's hard to imagine. It's absolutely hard to imagine the amount of deception that has taken place here and the degree that this goes. What's even more harder and difficult to imagine is how simple it really is. It really is simple. The difficult part is, of course, finding remedy for it. But at the end of the day, what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a whole lot of presumption that if we stand up and say, nope, that's it, I don't want it, we're done, I rebut all presumption, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And, you know, it's great. We all sit around, we twirl our thumbs, and we wait for the world to get better, and there's stuff foreclosing on us. What the hell is going on here? So, you know, we've got to find out, we got to travel a path and say, okay, where do we have to go here to get our remedy? Where do we have to go to get justice? How do we get justice? How do we maneuver these things? If you're in court right now, do everything you can to get the hell out of court. Because you're not going to find anything there, nothing. Yes, I understand that there's a few cases that actually maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong on that because a few people have contacted me and they're having some success in their cases where some judges are coming back. And gal in Kentucky came back to me and said a judge in her case said, "Wait a second here, something's fishy here." So he didn't sign off on the foreclosure. So I do think that some judges are waking up to this. I don't think all judges are crooked. I had a conversation the other day with Casey Tuckness and Michael Winston, who is the whistleblower from Countrywide, which is a very interesting conversation, and I hope to do quite a bit of work with them as well on these issues. And a judge was on the line. So what we have is we have judges that are that don't know what's going on and that are sick of these things, and they really don't know what's going on. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole issue here is you're dealing with a system of automation, a system of automated processes and certifications that are running the system and dictating how the system operates. And these are all business processes, of course. And, you know, I know some people get upset by, oh, my God, the county's a corporation. Of course the county's a corporation. Why should we be surprised by that? I mean, that's no surprise. We shouldn't be surprised by that. We shouldn't be shocked by that. We should be angry with it because as a corporation and as a resident or as a person living within our county, we should be a stakeholder in that corporation. And we technically speaking, we are. But we've been vanquished from that because of processes that are hidden, that pay profits to state officials, county officials, county business people and so on and so forth, that is to our demise. And it all goes back to this, and it really does. It all goes back to the whole issue we're dealing with has to do with our competency. It does. It's all hinged in that 1897 General Allotment Act. It really is hinged all in that, and that again, it's hinged in the fact that once we're found incompetent, the trust that has been active liquidates to others instead of liquidating to us. And so what we have here is we have a system in place where it is more profitable for the people in the know, the people that know the trade secrets, the people that are keeping all of the information and this so-called sophisticated knowledge from us. They're getting wealthy, and we're getting screwed. And so we've got to get around these things. We have to find a way to find victory. And we can do this. We can do this. The door that we all have to go through, and the hub of this, is Treasury. Treasury is the only place that we can convert ourselves, if you want to call it a birth bond, call it that, that's fine, it is a bond, to convert that birth bond by our signature, because only a living person, and this is what you have to understand, only a living person can sign on a check. Only a living person can take a delivery of stocks or transfer stocks. Only a living can do that. Okay, so that's really the importance of making that conversion with that birth certificate through Treasury. You're coming in there and you're self-authenticating yourself. You're coming in and saying, this is who I am. By my signature, this is who I am. And these are my accounts. And this is what I plan to do with my accounts. We have to have an understanding, though, of what the birth certificate is. These people that are saying that's its death bond and it's your debtor, it's your slave bond. That's just a load of rubbish. It's bullshit. It's not true. Your birth certificate is represented by shares of preferred and common stock that were issued at your birth, and the birth certificate is representative of about 10 savings bonds that we never cashed in. Savings bonds, not debt bonds, savings bonds. The debt side of this comes into the fact that that when we rolled over into adulthood and we never made our claim on the land and basically self-authenticated ourselves as living people and capable of taking care of ourselves and not needing the assistance of codes and statutes or public benefits, that we become the debtor. So we've got to make a distinction between it, because some of the things that we're saying, some of the things that we're talking about, some of the things that we're making claims to, some of the verbiage that we're using I don't want to sound, I don't mean to be demeaning anything, because I did the same thing. We got to change it because it's wrong, it's outdated, it's incorrect. If we're going to go ahead and make these claims, we got to get rid of some of the nonsense that we've been talking about, and get down to business at hand, because that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with commerce. We're dealing with business. We're dealing with stocks and bonds. Okay, we're dealing with the fact that we're a debtor because that's how our Treasury functions. That's how we function as a bankrupted society. And that's just the way it is. I mean, it sucks that there's no money and there's no gold, but at the same time, though, it doesn't, because we're dealing with a system of credits. And to sit there and say, oh, we have no money, there's no money in the system. Well, if I gave you, and this shuts them up instantly when people complain about bringing real money back, and they complain about that. And I said, well, if I gave you $1 million in credit, would you complain? No, of course you wouldn't, because that's the way our society functions. That's the way that things operate, and it's never going to go back. It's never going to go back. And if anything else, it's operating in a digital world, and it's operating on Bitcoin and, what's the other one? The other one is, I heard of another one a couple of days ago. Can't think of what it is offhand. But we're dealing with issues of that nature. So what we're dealing with here is, hold on a second, I got to take a drink. Okay, what we're dealing with here, we've got to roll through Treasury. Treasury has our accounts, but we have to do one other thing. we've got to go onto the IRS side of the coin, and we've got to collapse the tax shelters, because that's where they're hiding everything. All of this identity theft, everything that they are doing with our identity and making all this money and all these concealed trusts and all these hidden accounts, they still have to report it. They still have to report it to the IRS. And they're reporting it through tax shelters, and they're reporting it through various identities and various manipulations of our identity. And we're going to go through some of these forms here tonight. And what we're going to do here, I'm excited because what this does is this is the beginning of the end for these guys. It gives us a pathway that we have to remedy, that is through the IRS, that is through status and changing our status with the IRS on several fronts. What they have done is they've taken our status, our true status, which is not a state national, it's an American national, and they have taken that to a different level as a foreign national. And guess what? That's what we are. We can make the same claim to that. While we've been here toiling away day after day, earning a paycheck, or as I've been doing, fighting foreclosure for all these years, trying to get on with our lives. At the same time, we don't realize, and we have to realize, that we are in 10 or 15 different places overseas, and we're residing there. You've got to understand, and this is when we talk about the fiction, you've got to look at your fiction in a whole different way. You've got to look at your fiction as a little mini you. And that mini little you, that little Kenneth W. Dost, which is in all caps, he's residing over in databases in Luxembourg. He's residing over as a book entry at Cedal Corporation or Cedal Bank. He's residing at the DHS office in Australia. So Kenneth William Dost, my alter ego, if you want to call that, he's all over the place. He's all over the place, and he's ours. When somebody says that he's not yours, that the all caps name is yours, bullshit. It's yours. It's yours. It's your identity. It's your identity that they stole and they put a value to. They put you in CDOs. They put you in credit-based databases. They put you in information databases like CoreLogic and whatnot. And they are pooling that, and they are marketing it, and they're selling securities on that. Well, damn it, that's you. That's your marketable value. You have all rights to that. Now, I saw a document the other day, and maybe I dreamed it because I can't find the damn document now, but it was from 1999, and it was a document that was written by the IRS, and it was a really strange document because it was almost a warning to us to tell us what we need to do and what was coming. And what was described, and I really have to find this, and I don't know what the hell happened to it. It's gone. But what it was describing was it was telling us that there's schemes that are taking place, are going to be taking place, that bifurcates our identity and takes our identity and profits on it overseas and in different financial capacities, and that it's basically illegal. But the saving factor, if you will, is, and this is across the board. I'll point this out to you as we go through documents here. That clearly say that this is a shell game, and the shell game is as long as we don't tell them that they're the actual beneficiaries and equity owners, we're okay. As long as we don't tell them, so can't say nothing. Now this replicates dramatically and can be shown and seen very, very clearly in the tax documents. I came across, now I've got documents in the Treasury right now. I've got communication from the IRS basically threatening me because my taxes are not up to date. They're 5 years behind, telling me that I'm a tax protester and blah, 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 so on and so forth. But at the same time, though, they also said, in their certain way, that, hey, get your, because they're already familiar with what I've got in the Treasury. And they said, hey, get your taxes updated, your filings updated, so that we can do a proper assessment. And when you do that, do a FOIA request in the capacity that you came in, which was as me. I signed my birth certificate. I signed my birth certificate as a living man, so I came in as a living man. So that I'm under that capacity. I removed the bar between, fired him, and put myself in as attorney-in-fact. So in that capacity, do a FOIA request. So, okay, so that got me thinking. And they gave me the biggest key. I could kiss an IRS agent, actually, because what they did was it all made sense. Okay, we have to have something to balance the books against. So we have to have our filing in. It doesn't matter if it's accurate or not, because it's not accurate anyhow. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to do a FOIA request. And because we're doing it in the capacity that we are, and again, it's very important that you know this. It's very, very, very important you understand that you have a bar between you and your all-caps name. You have to kill that bar. That's the attorneys. That's a broker. That's any Tom, Dick, or Harry that has license to your copyright to make decisions for you that you are not being informed of. So basically, it's a blank check to do whatever the hell they want to you. It's a blank check to traffic you, to steal from you. So that's the blank check. So you've got to. So it's very important. You've got to remove that. But then what you do is when you see that once that's removed. In your FOIA request, now what you've done is you said, hey, I'm aware that there are all these filings out there that are being filed in my master file account that are stealing from me, that are earning monies, that are earning credits that I did not give my approval to, that I did not have knowledge to, that they were initiated by unauthorized use of my signature and identity. And you remove the privacy aspect of that, to the Privacy Act, to say that you have all rights to those records, and you do have all rights to them. One of the reasons why when you see people put FOIA requests in and they don't get responses, the reason why they're not responding to you, and you have to understand this, and I do understand it, because it does make sense. It's just the way that it's been manipulated so that it goes to our disadvantage. But what they've done, what they're using, you got to remember, when you're talking about IRS, you're talking about any of these state agencies, they have policies in place for confidentiality. So unless you come in the proper capacity, they cannot give you the information that you seek. And as a matter of fact, they can't even tell you why they can't give you the information that you're seeking. And that all has to do with that bar between. So you have to remove that bar between, and you have to put yourself there so that you're the one that is representing you. You are the attorney-in-fact. You are the designee. You are the representative of your all-caps name for the benefit of your living man. You got to give yourself titles. And so what you've done now is you have opened up the books essentially. Now those books can be balanced against the Treasury, and we can close out the trusts and have all the accounts shift to our trust and go on our way. It's as simple as that. Now, how do we make that happen? Well, I went through the IRS filings, and I came across 26 pages, single-spaced, pages of tax shelters that they're hiding behind, that they've got us in. And we are seen as, and this is what we are passive investors. Going further than that, we are unknowing passive investors who are not, let's see, what's the word, we don't meet the standards of knowledge. So we are unknowing passive investors. Now, we have every single right to, this is the beauty of it, we have every single right to come in and revoke that. Now, going back to that 1999 IRS document that I can't seem to find now, that was one of the points that I made in there. Revoke all election. And when we're talking about election, we're not talking about voting for crazy man Trump or Hillary. We're talking about tax status elections, elections to excise tax or excise programs or like-kind exchanges or any of these different kinds of crazy tax shelters. That's what they're talking about when they talk about elections. So what we want to do is we want to find, if you haven't done, I know some people have done this already, and if you haven't, these are some of the things that we need to do. Now, note about that first, though. Some people say, well, we don't want to use their forms. I don't want to use their forms. They're going to trap us. I don't want to use their forms. And I believe that for a while as well. I don't believe that anymore. I mean, we do have to do our own affidavits. I mean, even the IRS, even in a lot of these filings here, when you go through and you read them, it tells you that, you have to file an affidavit or declaration or something of that nature. But at the same time, though, we have to kind of grow up a little bit, and we have to come to an understanding of we're dealing in a society that functions on processes, and whether we like them or not, there's some processes that we have to follow to be able to get what we want and to get ourselves properly situated. Because remember, what we have here is we have a system that is lawless, and it is really lawless, and it's operating on presumption. And in order to unwind all that presumption, it's one thing to sit there and to scream at the top of your lungs in the middle of town square who you are, and everybody look at you like you're freaking crazy or something. It's quite another to be able to actually collect on it and enforce it. And in order to enforce these things, we're going to have to accept the fact that we have to do certain paperwork. And this paperwork is and a lot of people cower away when you hear about the IRS, and I cower away too to some degree. But at the same time, though, we are in a unique position here, guys. We're in a very unique position here to where we can hold the IRS and Treasury's feet to the fire, because there's nowhere for anybody to run. There's nothing they can do to deny us, to not perform for us, to not give us remedy. Okay. So we have to accept the fact that we're going to deal with the IRS. We're going to deal with certain filings. So the three filings that you need to do initially is one, a 28. So 2838 or 2848. I think it's 2838. That is your appointing yourself as attorney in fact, and basically firing your any prior powers of attorney. That's an absolute must. What I did with that also, though, I also did a declaration of life with that and a affidavit appointing myself attorney in fact. So I did it both ways. Another document that we want to fill out is the 14039. That's your identity theft document. And the third one is the 8821. That document opens up the accounts. Now, it goes deeper than that, because let me read through some of the documents here. I'll tell you what, can you talk for a second? I got to get a sip of water here. If you can fill in for a second.
All right, Ken, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. I did say that we needed to have our pens and paper available.
No, you don't, because this stuff will all be made available. Just listen. Don't be so frantic to write. Just listen. Go ahead and put a recording of it too. But here, talk for a second. I got to sit down for 1 minute.
Okay. All right. We'll open the floor up at some point when Ken is ready to pause and take questions or comments or whatever. I'm sure everybody has a lot of them, and we want to give everyone a chance to ask him whatever you'd like to ask him. So just let me know when you're ready, Ken, and put you back in here.
Sorry about that. I dropped it there, too. I told myself I was going to talk slow tonight, and I failed on that one. So
You're doing very good. No, actually, you've been going at a nice pace and, easy to follow.
Okay, good.
So, probably... you've got some good people on the call that I know are listening very intently. So
yeah, this is, like I said, this call here, this is a watermark. This is the watershed mark. This call here is going to set a new foundation for where we head if we choose to go that route. This is the end game. Okay, this is where everything comes together. We have a landing pad, if you will, that clearly states what we are or what we can be, and what we can designate ourselves as. And this is really the point. The point of the matter here is that we can be anything we want to be, really, in a certain tax structure or a certain status structure. That can be dual citizens if we want to be. There's many things that we can become, which they made us, and they did so. And keep in mind, you always have to remember, and this is what's so important about the tax shelters. The tax shelters, we can prove and show unequivocally that it is a front for concealing identity theft. And it is stealing our identities, and it is housing the profits, the trust, the accounts, the benefits, not the public benefits, but the private benefits of our spendthrift trust, and it's all hidden. It's all hidden in a very public place, really, if we approach it properly in our declaration or affidavit or in our capacity, if you will. It's there for us to claim, and it's there for us to take. And I want to go through some of these filings here, and I'm not sure which ones we necessarily have to file. This is what I'm going through now, and I'm going through these forms, and I'm thinking, holy shit, a lot of paperwork here. And I don't think we need to do it all. I think really what it comes down to is the fact that we need to identify it through a FOIA, and then make make the identity and do a revocation of election, and basically we retire is really what it is. What we want to do is we want to retire our accounts. Now, there is a question there of whether we want to be careful not to divest ourselves. We want to be careful not to liquidate ourselves. And you know, these are things that, yes, are definitely of concern. But at the same time, we're dealing with issues here that are very flexible. In terms of how we're dealing with securities, for instance, our savings bonds, which I'm heavily inclined to believe are Series EE, are bonds that we can have reissued. And those bonds have stopped. I mean, for those of us who are in our late 40s or 50s, I mean, those bonds have stopped paying interest years ago. I mean, they're gone. I mean, they've been destroyed. But again, through proper claim and proper paperwork and proper form, they can be reissued by Treasury as lost, stolen, or mutilated securities. And that goes the same with all these other securities. So what you have here now is what we're doing. Think of it this way, in terms of our copyright. And if you've read the 1790 Copyright Act, kind of put that in the back of your mind a little bit, and as we talk about this, that copyright is very important to us. In the situation that we are now, as incompetents, they have proprietary oversight over us, and so we are protected in that sense, but we're protected in the sense of well, we're going to get raped, robbed, and stolen from, and when we're all done with that and we wipe our hands of that, we'll take care of you because you'll be awarded the state. So we got to take care of you. So that's that kind of protection, which we don't want that, right? That's not what we want. We don't want that. We want the other kind of protection. We want to reverse it. We want to reverse it to where when we roll into Treasury, we are coming in as just soleil, on the soil, living man, living woman, executor, with all constitutional protections, with a shared copyright with Treasury. And shared copyright is not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing, because what we do with that is we say, okay, Mr. Treasury man, Mr. IRS man, now that we're talking on even, man to man, so to speak, man to woman, what we have here is we've got all of this identity theft here of all these people that are basically taking federal public money from private persons, and profits and unjust enrichment and credits and all kinds of other mishmash, and have put them in all these tax shelters here that have gone without levy. Wow. They've never been. So you got all these people out there, all these attorneys out there, all these judges out there, all these state actors out there that have stolen my identity. They buried it in tax shelters, and they're not paying any taxes on it. So I want to collapse, Mr. IRS man, Mr. Treasury. I want to collapse all these tax shelters, and you have an obligation now to protect me, number one. But you, as a Treasury, that your job is to go after all the monies that are owed to the United States, you have an obligation now to go after these guys. So see what we've done? We've flipped the coin on these people. Now, some people will say, and I'll entertain the question because it's a very valid point, well, what are they going to do about it? What if they don't do anything about it? What if they ignore us? That's a possibility. That is a possibility. But and that's one of the reasons why we're talking here tonight. And that's one of the reasons why we've got to educate ourselves, why we've got to come together on a common ground, and we have to force the issue. It's an issue that shouldn't have to be forced because we do have all right to go in and make our claim. Now, there are very specific ways to do that. And now we'll go over some of these things in a minute that are quite detailed. I mean, very, very detailed. Things that have just been initiated. So when we talk about these people doing these private processes right now, it's all going to come back and smack them in the ass because that's how they've wiped all that stuff out. It's gone. There's whole different processes right now and they're going to ignore everything else. So we've got to be up to date on what they're doing and what the latest process is. At the same time, though, we cannot be expected to know all these things. We cannot be expected to jump through any more fucking hoops, pardon my French. But I think we're sick and tired of all the hoops that we've jumped through. I think that we have identified our target and what that target is, and it's about damn time that they perform for us. Now, that's real easy to say for one person, and it kind of get ignored. But if we come in unison, it's going to be a little more difficult for them to not give us the proper service that we are due as constitutionally protected living men and women. It's a big issue. It's a huge issue. The things that we are dealing with here are of immense magnitude. It's very volatile. These are issues that, if pressed, we could really make a very strong statement, because what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a person's stolen identity. And I don't think that these are issues that, presented properly, not using the birth certificate language or any of that language, but approaching this in a logical, almost business-like manner. I think that the sheeple out there would even kind of take notice of these things, and I think that's a plus that we have going for us, because what this is there's really there's no denying, there's no hiding. Once the cat's out of the bag, it's out of the bag. It's a trade secret. Once a trade secret's out of the bag, it can't be put back in. And what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a series of trade secrets, the biggest one being that we were intentionally, and it's very hard to believe, but it's enraging that they were able to get away with it, and they're still getting away with it. A clear deception to make us believe that we are debtors, to make us believe that we had a mortgage loan ever to begin with. Because you can go through these patents and you can read for yourself what clear amounts of fraud and deceit has been taking place on us. And really the basic gist of it is that they have sold us an investment that was to be to our benefit, but instead of making it to our benefit, they sold us to the insurance companies. So they sold us out as a hedge bet, essentially, intent of driving us into bankruptcy or driving us into incompetency, which, in legal death, essentially, financially incapacitated, legally dead, so that they can, in the interim period, pump up the insurance policies on our estate, because that's what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with real property here. We're dealing with our estates. We're dealing with heirs and beneficiaries. We're dealing with multi-million dollars of accounts that they are pumping up while we are paying our so-called mortgage, thinking that we've got our nice little white picket fence and, life is good, la, 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 apple pie, 4th of July, and all that bullshit. While we're doing that, they have already set up the systems and the operations to have us to find us to throw us into bankruptcy, so that they can steal all these accounts for themselves. And it's very clearly laid out in patent after patent after patent, and some of them are more blatant than others. There is a Bank of New York Mellon patent that deals with a clearing transaction through DTC, that clearly, and I don't have it right in front of you, but clearly the language is I'm paraphrasing, but the language essentially says we're going to throw out all legal principle because it doesn't apply here. Because if it did apply here, then the borrower, who's not really a borrower, he's really the investor and really the equity owner and the property owner, we don't want that person to get the benefits for this. We want to put those benefits elsewhere. We don't want to give them to the person that it rightfully belongs to. We want to give it to the thousands of people that we have sold this person off to and fractionalized them to. That's what they want to do. So this is what they have done. Everybody knows it. The IRS knows it. Treasury knows it. They all know it. SEC knows it. I don't think now. Does that mean that they're evil or they're bad? I'm not going to say that because I don't know yet. I don't think so. I think Treasury got hoodwinked into. I think Treasury got, pardon my French, but I think they got butt fucked. And I think that they got put in a position that they got outwitted and outdone by Wall Street and the attorneys. And I can pretty much justify that point to where I think they did get hoodwinked, because I don't think these guys even have a clue. As a matter of fact, I know they don't. Speaking with this person the other day, countrywide whistleblower, he knows nothing of the patents. Didn't even hear them before. Had no clue about the patents. So when you're talking about these patents, and you're talking about these processes, a lot of these people, county level, state level, court level, they don't have any knowledge. They really have no clue about this. So when we're dealing with these patents, we're dealing with the upper level executive offices, people. We're dealing with the executive office of Bank of America. We're dealing with the executive office of Morgan Stanley, with the executive office of Deutsche Bank, executive office of DTC, and of course the tying factor to all of this is the attorneys. But then again, we're dealing with different levels of attorneys. That little pissant that's taking you to court, it's still wet behind the ears. He has no clue about this stuff, and he's going to be a sacrificial lamb. The people that we want to go after are the patent attorneys. They're the ones that set this up. So really the question is, so really what we have to do is we have to direct all attention. We have to put aside, we have to put aside the nonsense now. It's time to grow up and put aside all this nonsense and all these things that we've been pontificating about for quite a while now. And we got to get down to business. We got to roll up our sleeves. And we've got to get into the paperwork and make this happen for ourselves and burst through the front doors and make these things happen. Now, here, let me go through some of these forms. This one's a very interesting one. This one's a very, very interesting one. I'm going to read part of this one to you because this one strikes me this one really strikes me because this has to do with ministry. This has to do with Scientology, essentially. They call Christian Science in here. And it's real interesting. This is a Form 4361. And it's an application for exemption from self-employment tax for use by ministers, members of religious orders, and Christian Science practitioners. And it's very interesting because it goes through here. Here's the certification. If I could read this to you. It says, I certify that I am conscientiously opposed to, or because of my religious principles I'm opposed to, the acceptance, and get ready for this, for services I perform as a minister, member of a religious order, or not under a vow of poverty or Christian Science practitioner, or any public insurances that makes payments in the event of death, disability, old age, or retirement, and that makes payments towards the cost of or provides services for medical care. Public insurance includes insurance systems established by the Social Security Act. So what is that telling you? What it's telling you is they're saying we don't want any public benefits. Why? Because we want our trusts. Do you see that?
Interesting.
Now, going on in here, it goes very. There's some other. I can't find a part in here. It's a few-page document here. One of the things it mentions in here, which really struck me, because I've always kind of said the ecclesiastical side doesn't really matter here, but this does. In this case, it does. There is a part in here, and I can't find it offhand. I still got to find it here. It does talk about an ecclesiastical statement, and there's another part in here that talks about the corporate body. So basically, what they've assumed here is that they're assuming that they're assuming they're taking the corporate soul, and they're saying, "But my corporate soul is my corporate soul. I don't want any of your public benefits, and I'm not taking the vow of poverty." You see where that's going?
Wow.
So these are some of the things that we're dealing with here. So these are the realities that we're dealing with. So when you're talking about, and we talk about all these tax credits that people are taking and all these tax shelters, we've got to understand one point. And please get this through your head. Every one of these fucking tax shelters, pardon my French, is on the basis of one thing. It's got you. It owns you. Because we did not put our foot down and say no. So... But it's not as simple as just stomping our foot and say no. I mean, we've got to take more action than that in order to enforce it, right? Okay, now here's another one. Now, I think you've all heard of real estate REITs, real estate investment trust. A REIT is operational. It's a single name trust essentially, but it's a single name trust that can be put into an investment club, a gambling club, a city pool, a community pool. It can be put into any number of pools. But at the end of the day, though, each one of those, all those pools are made up of one thing, and that's a person's identity. Okay, that's your signature. That's your property. It's your asset. So what happens here, and it's a REMIC too. When you were sold off into these loan trusts on Wall Street, that was a REMIC. When you got served with a assignment deed of trust, and like I said, you got to remember here, and you got to really think this. Everything that you think is the way it is, it's not. It's a direct opposite, and it really is a direct opposite. And here's a perfect example of that. When you get served with an assignment deed of trust, it says MERS. You know, the servicer the low-life servicer that reads off a computer screen. Now she's going to assume the identity of the vice president of MERS, and she's going to make an assignment to HSBC trustee for in my case, own it, mortgage loan asset trust, BAS series, blah 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 blah, so on and so forth, series 2005-4. That's a REMIC, and what's the first thing we all do? We all became, or thought we became proficient at PSAs because that's the only document that we had anything to look at. So we did exactly what they wanted us to do. And we made the argument, we went into court and said, well, wait a second here. That trust closed back in October of 2005. It's 2008 here. How the hell can we be assigned that trust? You know, and we were never assigned to it. We were removed from the trust. That's what's really happening. It's the opposite. They removed us from that trust into a single name REIT. And a REIT, the tax codes in the REIT, cannot hold any assets. It has basically a passive. It has to pay out 90% of its assets or its monies. So all those monies that are paying out, that REIT is us. All those monies that should be coming to us as credits, they're giving them to somebody else because we haven't come in and said no, those are ours. They're not theirs. Those are ours. So what they've done here, so we've got to become we've got to become sophisticated here. We've got to kind of become a little bit more knowledge on our investments and our configurations of what we've been converted to. When we talk about derivatives, I know that we say that we're talking about Kenneth William Dost, all caps, and any derivative spellings thereof. We got to go beyond that, because we're not talking about derivative spellings of our name, although we are, but we're talking more than that. We're talking about conversions. We're talking about digital conversions. We're talking about being morphed into tax credits, into biofuels, into gas guzzlers, into REITs. Okay, so we're configured into all these different configurations. That's what a derivative is. Well, a derivative is a creature of copyright law. And a derivative, it's very simple what a derivative is. What a derivative is, in its raw form, is a slight alteration to a copyright that doesn't change the underlying purpose of that copyright. Okay? So what was a Fannie Mae document? It was a copyrighted document. Okay? It was a work for hire. So basically, when we signed that document, we signed up as a contractor and as an employer, and we were employing the services of Litton Loan or Ocwen to do services for us. Now, if it was on the up and up, and everything was properly represented to us, all those credits that were being serviced or being being serviced would be coming back to us. But because we were lied to, and we were made to believe that we're a debtor, that we have a mortgage loan, those servicers are putting it into tax shelters, into insurance policies. They're having a good old time with our identity. And they're making a fortune off of it. The thing about it is they can't touch any of that until they get us to abandon our properties and evict us from our homes. That's why they keep coming after you. They keep coming after you because they don't give a shit about the house, because the house is a condemnation tax credit, or it's an environmental hazard tax credit. That's why you see so many frickin' houses that sit vacant. Why? Because they're more profitable. Been vacant because they're collecting the tax credit off of that. But it doesn't matter, because even though you're out of the house, your title is still attached to it. They can never take your title. They can't do it. They can't do it, because once they take your title, all of a sudden they have all full liability. So how did they get away with it? They got away with it through the MERS agreement. When they got us to sign that MERS agreement, they got us to agree to an exclusive licensing agreement to let them have all rights, title, and interest to us, to rape, plunder, steal, to do what they want with us. Well, the good news about that is there's two things here. The good news is, if you've read that MERS Nations Bank agreement, and you really understand what we're talking about here, or even if you're just starting to understand what we're talking about here, that's a good thing. And if you're not yet, then please indulge and try and just give it effort, because it'll come to you. What you see is you're going to be pretty much infuriated, because that really is a slavery document. It's a document just saying I'm going to be a slave. At the same time, it's our golden ticket to our estates, to all our trusts, to all our accounts. It's prima facie evidence that you were never a debtor. Why? Because it's an agreement that jumps out of the Fannie and Freddie document that's connected by the name MERS Nation, Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems as a nominee. That's very interesting. When we go through all some of these tax forms here, they're talking about nominees, and how nominees can be fired and removed at any point in time, and also how nominees can be held liable for damages. How do we get to these things? How do we exercise And how do we enforce the MERS Nations Bank Agreement? We enforce it by collapsing the IRS tax shelters. Does that make sense? Any questions so far?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and open it up and give people a chance to unmute their phones to go ahead and ask questions if you're ready. Okay, so anyone out there have questions for Ken Dost?
I'll ask some questions. So
Okay,
Ken,
who's this?
This is Ben in Ohio.
Ohio. Hey, all right. My native land.
Yeah, I know. You know me.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So how do, what kind of paperwork will we need to do to class the MERS or whatever, or what do we need with MERS?
What I did, what we all got to do is we've got to roll MERS through fiscal services, Treasury, and IRS and make it part of our claim. And the claim is really the claim goes to rebutting any knowledge, any agreement, any.
Hello?
Okay, where'd she come from?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I think he just was trying to put it into the Q&A.
Oh, okay. The point of the MERS agreement is we've got to identify what we know. We've got to because this is all presumption. And again, I'll beat this drum from now on. When we get into these tax shelters, it's very clear when you get into the text of these things. And I got about 50 here to go through, at least. Getting into the text of these tax shelters, you really get into terms that are describing to us and terms that we really need to use. That is not the living man. That is not some of the terms that we're using, but are more terms of investment credits, the beneficiary, the true agent, the actual principal. So you're getting into all kinds of presumptions, and understand that's what these tax shelters are. These tax shelters are mere presumptions that we agree to these things. Now, isn't that funny? I mean, think about that for a minute. Think about all this stuff for a minute. Think about it for a minute. Isn't it to me, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's amazing that at the end of the day, when we go through all this stuff, we line out all the facts and details. At the end of the day, it comes down to a couple of very simple key points, and it really does. This matrix is done with. The matrix has been defined. It's defined now, and there's no way that they can really. There's nowhere really for them to go. There's nowhere really for them to hide, because everything comes down to this. The intentional trespass of copyright, the unauthorized use of signature. It all comes down to a lot of presumption that is housed, and it is clearly delineated that we have all rights to revoke. There's one tax form in here that has to do with it's one election. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a certain election, and it says that if we as the beneficiary want to revoke this, just send this form back blank and just write revoke, 45-degree angle across.
Nice.
So what we're dealing with here is this is the best news for us. This is the best news for us because it gives us a landing spot. It gives us a definitive point in law that shows that we have all rights to come in and change our status. More so, though, that they have come in and they have manipulated our status for financial gain, unjust enrichment, for harms, because they're harming us, for themselves, and these are all This is unlawful. This is against it. This is unconstitutional. So when we roll through, we've got the power of Treasury and the IRS. Now the question is, are they going to act? I don't see how they can't. I can see, I know a lot of people are afraid of the IRS, and some people send things in the IRS, and I got the same thing when I got my form back from the IRS, my Treasury forms, and it said, well, you know, I'm going to fine you $5,000. Fuck you, you ain't going to fine me. We can't be afraid of the IRS anymore. We don't have to be afraid of the IRS anymore. Why? Because we've got definitive proof that these tax shelters, that they're hiding tax shelters that are based on fraud, that are based on theft of identity. It even says it in the damn forms.
Question?
Yeah.
This is Gregory Gordon Martz.
Hi.
Hi. Would it be helpful if we put together a blank form affidavit to be able to have everyone as a group define their status?
No, we can't. I mean, I guess we could, but what we don't. Well, the last thing we want to have happen here is a class action. We don't want to spin off a class action.
No, I don't mean suit. I just mean something.
I know that, but that's what that might cause. I see what you're saying, and I do agree with you. Should it be a mass affidavit? I think it could be a common affidavit.
Right.
That is, you know, if you have 1,000 people, I don't think we have one affidavit representing 1,000 people, but to say that we have 1,000 affidavits that are all the same, that 1,000 persons are putting in,
well,
absolutely.
No, wouldn't be all the same. It would just be basically just the basic facts, you know, that making the disclaimer that we're, of course, not a corporation. We're not.
Well, actually, but see, here's the thing. But okay, let me interrupt you first. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me just interrupt for a quick second. We actually are the corporation. We actually want to grab hold of that corporation because that corporation is our trust, and that's what we want to collapse.
Well, that yes, but what I was getting at is that we're not that, but we control it as executors and basically make everyone the executor of their estate. Because of course, when they put their foot down on that footprint, they created the estate and they became the executor at birth. They just haven't claimed it yet. Now that we can claim it, you know, just something so it you know, trying to go after the you know, I think that there on all of these tax shelters, we need to do a forensic search and find out just exactly, you know, what a lot of the backgrounds of them are, and then do FOIA requests on each one of them to find out, you know, differing. You know, we could find ourselves basically.
Right. Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with a forensic audit. I think a forensic audit is an order, but I think it's an order after we do the FOIA request to Treasury or to IRS, because we have to kind of be the authority on that and expose those accounts. And then yes, there definitely is going to have to be an audit, a forensic audit at some point in time, because there's so many accounts out there that are kept off books, and these are all the hidden trusts and all the hidden life insurance policies. Those are all kept off books. So yeah, we would have to do a forensic audit at some point in time. But yes, I agree with you. We have to come up with several blanket statements. I think that we have to use the language that's being used, specific to the tax shelters, specific to our identity. In other words, that we were unknowing passive investors and equity owners, and language to that effect. Yes, absolutely. I think that yes, we got it. Yes, we have to go through the front door.
Yeah, I don't agree on giving it back. There's some that say that, you know, you just completely disenfranchise. You know,
no, we're not giving it back. We don't want to give it back. What we want to do is we want to take control of it. We want to be able to decide for ourselves whether we want to, because our bonds are going to be converted. Okay, do we want to liquidate those bonds, or do we want to convert those bonds to stock, or do we want to retire? You know, so really, I think it's a matter of, it's just taking the executive position and taking over the administration. We don't need you to administer to us anymore. We don't want you to administer to us anymore.
Well, the executor position.
Thank you. And if I can interrupt here, I think we have a lot of callers online and people that want to ask questions, and I need to ask you guys to please hit *6 so that you can be put into the queue to ask Ken questions. And we'll probably have to limit the time of each caller to about 3 minutes. So 3 to 5 minutes probably. So if you guys could, try and get through your question and whatever within that time frame, that would be great.
Well, you broke the fun up.
Well,
sorry.
I'll jump off if somebody else.
Well, no, go ahead. Go finish your one point though, because you were getting something I want to talk about. So go ahead and finish.
Well, as executors, we're our own court, basically. We
right.
control. This is the highest form of the probate court. Now they did basically probate us with the registration at birth.
Right.
So that's definitive. We do own control of the
right.
The
well, and that's the point of that's the important point of understanding that that we're dealing with our copyright here, and again that 1790 Copyright Act. So what we're doing basically is we're coming in, we're firing them, and we're saying that we're taking over all accounts. For our administration, or in conjunction with the assistance of fiscal services and treasury, which I think we do want. We do want that, but we're going to be the chief. We're going to be the king's chief.
We'd like to be able to get something. What I found about all of these folks that you try to deal with them, they're not going to respond in any way, shape, or form.
Well, again, that goes how you approach them too.
Right.
You got to approach them in the proper capacity. That's real important. And you also have to, because you got to understand, and I do understand. One of the reasons why they can't respond or they won't respond to you is because they have confidentiality agreements in place as employees of Treasury. So there's certain things they cannot divulge to us unless we, in other words, for IRS,
back,
okay. For IRS, we're doing tax shelters here. They can't ask me anything about a tax shelter. But if I come in proper capacity, I say, listen, I got a form here, it's 976 that I understand, is attached to my name here. I would like to have information on that. So we're addressing it, and we're addressing it in proper capacity to where it should strip all confidentiality and all privacy aside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, whether it's going to actually happen or not is something to be seen. But again, that's why I think there's importance with numbers here. I think that one or two people going through, they could probably push us aside. But if we've got 1,000 people, 10,000 people rolling through this with the same essential claims, it's going to be pretty hard to push us aside because that's something that's going to backfire on them if they do.
Hello, Ken?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve. I'm curious if you're familiar with the RACS report. It's IRS. It's a summary record of assessments. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. Yes, I've heard of it. What about it? Go ahead.
I've done some research on it, but it's what it says is revenue accounting system. So it's got to be part of that whole FOIA thing that you were mentioning. And then my other quick question. I'll drop it in your Facebook. I follow you on there, so I'll drop it in there and I'll make reference to it. So.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you mentioned revenue because that's exactly what we want to be identifying with. When we identify at the IRS, we want to talk about the revenue side of the IRS, which is the tax shelters. Now, you got to remember what they're doing here is they have put us into all kinds of programs, and they have a system of excise tax that they're balancing here. And what they do is all they're doing is all we're dealing with here is we're dealing with information and databases. So they're balancing workflow. Okay, so they created this system of a balancing workflow that they'll call biofuels or call gas guzzlers or call some nonsensical thing that creates tax credits, and that's hidden behind these tax shelters. And remember, because there's no money, right? There's no money in the system. There's only a credit system. Well, tax credits. So who's getting those tax credits? Well, of course they should be coming to us, and that's revenue. It's revenue generating. It's generating revenue in terms of credits, and that's what these tax shelters are blocking and preventing us from getting.
Have you identified who at the state level is like the state treasurer or the registrar? I mean, most of them, this is so that's a tongue twister word, but decompartmentalized.
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah, so they don't have a clue.
No.
So who at the state level do you think is who do you think at the state level has sold the identity from to the IRS and to the treasurer?
Well, it starts with the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is allowing unlawful acts, essentially. They're allowing the unlawful acts of bar attorneys and the bar's codes and standards to change our status without our knowledge. So that's where it begins. So this is where you have, for instance, I'll give you a for instance. Own It Mortgage, in my case. Own It Mortgage is a foreign corporation. It's a domestic corporation, but it's operating through CT Corporation as a Delaware corporation. So it's a foreign corporation, right? But then what you have is and I've tracked it down. I know where all my trust accounts are. They're under a company that was formed called KWD's LLC. And it's under a single name LLC, and that's where they're hiding everything. And this is listed as a domestic corporation. So what they're doing is they're floating us all over the universe as foreign, dignitaries, foreign traders, as foreign students, so on and so forth through these visas, and they're building up all these revenues and offshore accounts and whatnot. And then when they want to foreclose upon us, they domesticate us. So they put us back on as a U.S. citizen so that they can take our properties from us, and that generates a bunch of bonds. So now you got the bonds that are being generated through the county, through the district attorney's office, the treasurer. I mean, there's a lot of players that we're dealing with here. To the degree that they know what's going on, I don't think they look at it that way. I think they just look at it as here we are, a state that's trying to generate revenue, and they're going to get the revenue, take the revenue however they can get it. So I don't think they're really aware. I think it's a numbers game for them. I don't think they see the human side to it.
Probably not. There's one last thing I'll say, and I think you've seen this because I shared it on your Facebook wall, but there's a short video that everyone should watch and share all around. If you just put this in a search engine, banks don't make loans. They purchase securities through deposits, and it's a 3-minute dialogue by an economics professor out of the UK. And he explains it beautifully in 3 minutes.
And that's exactly right. Yeah, I agree. Everybody should watch that. That's exactly what they're doing.
So thank you.
Thank you. Before I take another question, I'm going to talk about one other thing. The banks know what they're doing. The banks are teetering on. They're at their end points here. We're operating under. Now, this is what when we get into Treasury, and we get into FATCA. It's probably too much to get into tonight because it's going to go off into all kinds of other subjects. We're getting into something called FATCA, which has to do with foreign affairs, transactions, something commercial act, I think, and we're getting into intergovernmental agreements to tax treaties. Okay, now we're getting into complex things here, but the beauty of it is we're dealing under FATCA. There's certain policies that I'm not going to get into right now because, like I said, it's going to go into a whole other thing. But it has to do with certifications. And remember what I said at the beginning. Everything we're dealing with here, it's like a birth certificate. It's when we sign it and we execute it and we say that this is who we are, we're self-certifying it. So we're getting the self-authority, and it's the same thing with these certificates. So HSBC knows this, and HSBC has they have 3 certificates that they're issuing through FATCA. Okay, now these are certificates that we want to do through the IRS. Basically say, no, we're the ones. Now, here's what they're doing. Now, they're issuing a certificate. Now, their certificate, when we think certificates, what do we think of? We think of our kids' graduation certificate or something that looks like that, right? we're not dealing with those kind of things. We're dealing with digital statements. And so what we have here with HSBC, there's one here, an individual self-certification form. And this is how blatant. And this, when I said everything's simple, and I really mean everything is really simple when you get down to it. This is how simple it is. This is how blatant it is, and this is what we need to attack, because this is where it'll all come down. This is their certification. Now, this is their statement. Now, listen to this. And they're attaching this to a, what they call an FFI owner reporting statement that goes with a, it's a W, which one is it? It's it's one of the W8 forms. W8BENE. Okay? Now, this is their withholding statement. Okay? This is what they said. Now, listen to this. We certify under penalties of perjury that the above information is true, correct, and complete, and that we are, in parentheses, I am, the authorized representative of the entity. Who's the entity? You are, named above. In confirming the rates of tax to be applied, as stated above, we have considered, where applicable, that eligible beneficial owners, A, meet the provisions of the relevant income tax treaty to claim a reduced rate of withholding, including any limitations on benefits provisions, and B, derive any U.S. source income received within the meaning of Section 804, income affected by treaty of the Internal Revenue Code. Further, here's where it comes in. Further, if FATCA Chapter 4 status was not provided for an underlying owner, we represent that it was because it was a pre-existing account that was not required yet to be redocumented under the documentation transition rules. What does that tell you? It tells you right there that they're going off an original signature, and it has been redocumented because we haven't come forward to make the fucking claim. Pardon my French. That's how this is the simplicity of what we're dealing with, people.
Thank you, Ken. I know for a lot of people it still seems very complex.
It's not. What I read to you is a very complex statement. It was very complex. But all we've got to do is say, no, we did not give approval to that. No, we do not give approval to any withholdings whatsoever. We revoke all that. It was all by unauthorized signature, and we collapsed the frickin' tax shelters because we have every right to.
Wow.
It's making the claim and making a statement in the right place with the right language, essentially. Now, there's some things here. I've got a 180-page Federal Register recorded document from Treasury and IRS that are new regulations that IRS instituted in January of 2017. And it doesn't mention birth certificates. It doesn't mention any of this stuff that anybody's doing in the private. It mentions none of that stuff whatsoever. Nothing. None of it. It's all about withholding statements and withholding statements and something here which is new, which we really got to kind of become aware of because it's very important. Something called standards of knowledge. And standards of knowledge is, what do they know? What do they know? How do they know it, and when did they know it? You know? Yeah. You know?
Wow. Is there, you were going to be working on a website, getting a website up or something. Is there any place that people can go to find information?
Yeah.
Or find documents?
That's hold on one second.
Okay.
And then I'd like to ask a question.
Sorry about that. My daughter's bugging me. She wants me to drive her somewhere. What were you saying?
Website or?
Oh yes. Well, it's we've kind of had to put it on hold because it's not coming together as quickly as I wanted it to come, as we wanted it to come together, and because of all this other paperwork that's being processed now with the IRS, this becomes a priority over putting the website up because this is the end game.
I have a question.
Can your documents be viewed on Facebook?
Yeah, I open up back up to that mortgage equals copyright derivative page.
Okay, very good.
We'll do more. And I still hope to get it off up and running. This is going to be a little bit longer than we anticipated. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of freaking work.
Sure. I get that. I know someone's anxious to jump in here with another question, so go ahead.
Hello, fearless leader.
Hey, how you doing, Liz?
I'm doing good. I always love your call. I have a question about you named some forms earlier, the 2838, I think the one, the one that has the identity theft, I didn't get that number, and the 8821. Now, you named a couple of documents ago with the 2838 that goes to Declaration of Life and such. My question is, are there any other filings, or are there any other documents that have to be done? Or can these things be done in any sequence at all? Can these filings be made without any other, you know what I'm getting at?
Well, I think and that's a good question. I don't know how many other documents we need to file because there's so many of these tax shelters, and there's so many different kinds of elections. Now, does a blanket revocation of election cover them all? I think we want to be careful with a blanket revocation of all elections because there's some things that we don't want to revoke. There's some things that we want to that we do want to accept the election of, and some things that we don't. So I think it's going. I think at this point in time, it's going to be a testing process. But it definitely has to begin with those three forms because you have to take over. You have to fire all powers of attorney, and you have to put yourself in as the attorney. In fact, the person that's going to make all the decisions. You have to state that you've identified identity theft, and you've also got to give permission to open up the accounts so that you can see to what extent the damage or whatever you want to call it's been done. And like I said, there's a lot of different forms here, and it's quite incredible when you see it. I mean, like for instance, here's Form 1120 PC, which is a U.S. Property and Casualty Insurance Company tax return. Do we want to see that? Hell yeah, we want to see that. Because they're taking they're taking casualty claims. The judges are taking casualty claims. So they have to file these things. So do we want to put in a request to see that form? Hell yeah.
Okay.
Here's another one. Do we want to do another? But the big one that we want to do, that we definitely want to do, and is the 80. Where is it at here? Hold on a second. Let me find it here. I think it's the 80. I want to say it's the 8115. I could be wrong on the number, but what it is we want to change the accounting. We want to change the accounting process because what's going on here? We have a one-sided accounting system where all these tax shelters are kept off books as we've come to know it, but the credit side is kept on separate books. So we want to bring the books together. Well, how do we bring the books together? Well, God dang it, there's an IRS form for it that we want to recharacterize the accounting. We want to change the accounting method, and it's a pretty lengthy form that goes into great detail on many different aspects, and do you put a check on it? Do you want to change the accounting for this? Hell yeah. You want to change it for that? Yeah, maybe not. This one? Yeah, definitely. So these are things that we need to kind of weigh through. But the beauty of it is that in all cases, where these tax shelters are dealing with one basic premise, and that basic premise is that we agreed to go ahead and be the passive investor. And here's something that really pissed everybody off. This will make you angry as hell, and it makes me angry as hell too. These electronic filing, tax filing companies, TurboTax and Intuit and things of that nature. What you didn't know when you signed the statement with them is that you agreed to be a passive investor. So you agreed to basically have your property stolen and put in tax shelters.
Wow, incredible. I know there's several people in the queue that have questions, and I don't have any way of seeing which caller is next. So, Marshal Schubert, if you have that information and want to put whoever's next up.
Hey, Ken.
Hey.
It's Sarah. I have a question about the documents, the tax filings as well. I don't want to make any mistakes with filing, documents that I shouldn't, or FOIA. I don't know which ones are based on FOIA requests versus what I'm filling out and doing.
I think first of all, if you put a statement in there saying that you're acting to the best of your knowledge, and that if you've crossed the line or anything, that it was done unknowingly and unwillingly, and you're just acting to the best of your knowledge, I think you're safe on that. I mean, I think the IRS can make all kinds of threats that they want at this point in time, but the fact of the matter is none of us are acting to act as tax evaders. If anything, what we're acting as is tax collectors. Really, we're seeking out knowledge of monies that were earned on our stolen identity. So I don't think there's really anything the IRS can really hold against us in that sense, because we're not protesting the tax. I mean, we're actually, that's what we are doing, really, because at the end of the day, when we set ourselves up, we won't be taxpayers. Like I said, I'll give you an example. Here's another one, WCHCE, a notice of expatriation and waiver of treaty benefits. Do we want to address that? Yeah, we do. 8233, exemption from withholding on compensation for independent personal services of a non-resident alien individual. What are they talking about there? They're talking about servicers. They're talking about loan servicers there. Do we want to see that form? Absolutely. So to answer your question, I don't think we can really make any mistakes with this that are going to really get us into trouble, because we're not protesting a tax. We're protesting the fact that there's been earnings. We're protesting the fact that we don't have a proper assessment of what we actually owe or don't owe on taxes, and that's what we're trying to get at.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I know that you guys are in the queue, so just feel free to speak up. Like I said, I can't see the board, so I don't know who's next.
Hi there, Ken. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. I just have a question. I've noticed that you do some comments, on Facebook where you say principal secured party creditor.
Yes.
So what is your point of view on like UCC1 filings and non-UCC filings?
Well, I haven't put mine in yet because I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it's absolutely necessary at this point in time, and I'm also of the opinion that it depends on what capacity you're going to act in at the end of the day. And what I mean by that is that if you're going to go in and like me, I'm going to retire basically. So I'm going to want to close out my accounts, or I want to bring them over into a private contract trust, and I'm not going to basically be acting in commerce. Now, if you're going to operate yourself and set yourself up as a bank, you're going to want to go through FDIC and OCC. In that case, and yes, I would definitely think that you want to do a UCC1, and then of course UCC3 is processing things through. But I think that is something that really is more of a decision and more of an action after we roll through Treasury and the IRS. That's my opinion.
And what does principal secured party basically means? You're first. You're the principal of it.
Principal secured party. Now this goes back. This is specific to the 1907 Articles of Incorporation under Delaware for the Corporate Trust Company of America, which we know now is Wilmington Trust, but more specifically is CT Corporation, which is the agents that are acting for all these banks and so on and so forth through the state. The reason we are the principal secured parties because of those articles of incorporation. We, as the natural person, have agreed to allow a principal to be the overseer of all our accounts and have all decisions to trusteeship, to creation of bonds, stocks, so on and so forth. So it's a principal that is acting on our behalf. So the reason why we're the principal secured party is because all of these transfer statements, all of these actions that initiate foreclosures, all of these transfers that are occurring underneath the signature of a principal that is acting on our behalf and our so-called approval. So really what we want to do is you can still be a secured party and not be a principal. The principal is essentially the executor is really what it is. So that's why you want to be the principal secured party, because what you're doing is you're kicking the fake principal off his tier and stepping up onto it yourself. So really what you're doing is you're kind of killing the Delaware directed trust. And that's everything that we're dealing with here. All these actions everything that's taken place here is directly due to, not just the 1907 articles, but also the specific patent that was 2010, 2008, which is the Delaware Principal Directed Trust. So basically what we're doing is we're addressing that and killing it.
Okay, what about some people that I see are doing DBAs or filing, doing business as a fictional name, stuff like that, and they get like an EIN? What is your point of view on that?
Well, we got to do the EIN. But now it's interesting that you mentioned about the DBAs, because in a couple of these forms here that we're addressing, it's specific to there's a couple of forms, more than a few forms that ask for your trade name. Kenneth William, all caps. Or if you want, it says, and this is what it says, or if you desire, you can put in your name as a DBA. Now, it doesn't say you have to be registered as a DBA. It just says you can put your name in as a DBA. Because I don't want to be, now what I've done here, I know everybody says you don't want to incorporate your name, you don't have to incorporate your name, just register the DBA and don't license it. Keep it a naked DBA, and then it's unincorporated. You can do that in any state. Just because you register your name doesn't mean it's automatically incorporated. It's not incorporated until you license use of it. Well, if you're a passive investor, right, which is what we really are, I mean, that's what we're going after. We're going after our passive investments, right? If that's what we are, then we don't want to be a licensed to DBA, because if we license a DBA, then we become a sole proprietor. If we become a sole proprietor, then we're going to get nailed with all the taxes. So you got to be careful on how you approach that.
Question, Ken?
Yes.
From Greg Martz. What about the worrying about the idea of contract and entering into their jurisdiction by by the submission of some of the forms? And
well, I don't think we have too much of a concern with that at the point at the level that we're going in, because we're going in as the executor, we're going in as the principal, we're going in and claiming the tax shelters. So we're really not who are we really contracting with. And again, when we go in this capacity, we're going in as a shared copyright with so we are going in with we are going in a contract, the 1790 Copyright Act with Treasury, but that's okay though, because if they're going to take 50% of my earnings, I don't care. That's fine with me. I got a limitless credit line anyhow, so what do I care? Plus, I've got their protection. I'm protected now because if any of these people try to steal from me or create all these accounts underneath without my knowledge, then they're going to go after them. I don't have to worry about it. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think in this case it's a good thing. I think that maybe we have to sit back and analyze and really think about the position that we're putting ourselves in and the power that we have at this point in time.
Well, yeah, they are the trustees, basically, of, and they have to act as trustees. Being
right, and you're also going to through a Form 56. You're also going to appoint them as fiduciaries. I appointed Maldonado out of the IRS Puerto Rico, Cheryl Morrow, Commissioner of Fiscal Services, and Munchin as Treasury as the fiduciaries.
Okay.
And see, the nice thing about this now, what makes this nicer, instead of throwing things into a black hole, which is what a lot of people are doing right now, is that we've gone beyond. We've looked on the other side of the wall. So actually, what we've done is we've really done our homework now. Now we really have done our homework. We're not putting because we're putting these people are doing these bonds and doing these and sending all these documents to Munson and saying, well, if I don't hear from you in 30 days, then I'm going to assume you accepted it. I mean, that's all well and good, but it's just not going to cut the mustard anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't cut the mustard because there's processes that have to be done. And we're remiss if we don't look on the other side of the wall. And that's what I've done. I've looked on the other side of the wall, and I said, well, it doesn't look too bad over here. It actually looks great because we can collapse everything.
Well, the administrative process will work if you can't get them to respond. You can basically, through tacit procreations or different items like that, you can force a response, or which can be admissible if it has to be.
Well, I'd rather not file liens against judges or anybody.
Oh no, no.
Now the administrator. Now, if these processes failed, then it would be appropriate to file a suit and file action against them, because now you've exhausted your administrative remedies. You haven't got the response, and so what you're suing for now is tortious interference of your expected inheritance.
Yeah. See,
and those cases are succeeding.
Well, in some cases, they're just forcing you into that. They can't with their non-response. The only time you get any response at all is if you're just going to file something, and if you haven't.
Well, again, though, remember what we talked about earlier. Remember about capacity, going in the proper capacity, and making sure that you remove that bar between and that power of attorney, that you have yourself in there so that you can speak to them. Because you got to think of that, and it really is. That's really a noteworthy item to give consideration to. Is that they're not all being assholes, or not just all ignoring us. Remember, they've got policies and as employees, and there's certain things they've got an employee guide to follow. So I think we need to think twice about why they're ignoring us, and is there something that we can do to tear that down? And I think that what's going to tear that down is removing the powers of attorney and being specific as to the forms that we're talking about, so that we have a direct connection with them then.
All right, very good. If anyone has questions or wants to add to or comment, please press *6 to jump into the queue. Well, Ken, as usual, it's a lot of information. If people go to your Facebook page and look on there, is there anything in particular that you would recommend that they view, or?
Well, it's hard to show information on there. I mean, no matter how you look at it. I mean, I've got the mortgage equals copyright derivative page. It's just hard to be able to view it on there. I'm gonna try doing more of these conversations that we're doing. I'm gonna try doing more of these things to illustrate. I want to do some videos, and I want to get this website off the ground. I mean, that's the most important thing, to really get people to understand these things. But I mean, I will be posting stuff online. I'll be talking more in this capacity as I am, and I'm hoping to be able to get some relief to get this somehow get this website going. And hopefully that's going to, it's not that I got a great team behind me. It's just that I have to link a lot of these things together, and I can't do it right now because I'm still putting information together, But
I hear you.
But I mean, what I think the takeaway from all this is that this is all very good stuff. This removes a lot of the. It should remove a lot of the fears, a lot of the barriers, and it should definitely capture your attention, if anything else. These are things that this is the end game here. I mean, when you can unravel this, and basically eliminate all the rabbit trails that go nowhere, and you can find a house for it or a home for it, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because they're always, and the problem that we have here and that we've suffered from is that it's an endless it's rabbit trails. There's nowhere that we can really hang our hat on to say, okay, this definitively shows that we're this or we're not that, or you know what I'm saying. But this does. So it really is. It's really a powerful tool here, because at the end of the day, it does come down to standing firm on who you are and what your rights are, and your rights as a property owner. And it also should, if you don't understand it, you should also understand that what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a lot of, say, alter egos of ourselves that are out there, that are making money, that are hurting us. I mean, it's those alter egos out there in terms of all these fractionalizations that everybody's grasping at. And that's one of the reasons why, and well, it's not one of the reasons, that's the main reason why we're getting evicted from our houses, why the judges are signing off on it, why the police are arresting us, why our children are being taken away from us. And the direct cause of all of this is these money streams, these revenue streams out there that we're not putting our foot down, saying, hey, wait a minute, those aren't yours. Those are mine. So, you know, once we put our foot down, we remove those revenue streams out there by basically going into Treasury and saying, hey, I'm here as a whole person, and I want to rein in all my mini-me's and all my fractionalizations out there. Once you take all that back, then you've taken away all their power. And if they mess with you at that point in time, you can take them down. And you can clean their clock and take everything that they own from you, because they don't have any power over you anymore.
Ken?
Yeah.
This is Greg again. Say, I think that, a lot of this, I'm getting an awful lot out of this. And if you need any, I've got a hosting plan with unlimited bandwidth, and I've got website experience. I've also with media and the like. So, I mean, if you need any help along those lines, I'd be glad to.
I'll tell you what I appreciate that. What I really need, what would really help me, and this is the only thing that's going to really work, is I really need a team that's here with me. I mean that can work with me for a week or two solid, to where we can get things up and running, and I can give direction on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, because it's too much for me, for one person to do. It's impossible. That's what I really need, because we can get a lot of this stuff expedited if I had my team in Idaho, if we were together for a week solid, maybe we're not going to get it all done, but we can get a big bulk of this done. This is a lot of information to grind through, and to not so much process, but kind of properly link together.
Well, what
that's
state,
what I need.
What state are you in?
I'm in Oregon.
In Oregon. Yeah, see, I'm in Washington. And,
okay. Whereabouts?
I'm up in Mukilteo area.
Where?
In Mukilteo, north
that. Seattle,
Linwood, north of Seattle.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm in Scappoose, which is right by, kind of by Longview.
Oh, okay.
Across the river.
Well, I'm a sole proprietor, run a lumber yard, and I'm the only one, so I'm doing everything here.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's tough to get away but it would be something that can, if I could help through through emails and things like that.
That's not going to work, though. I mean, it's just not. I mean, I've tried that. It doesn't work. I mean, what I've got is I've got documents here. I mean, I've got all kinds of documents, all kinds of patents, and copyrights, and all this stuff kind of needs to be. It's already in a database. It just needs to be linked. And I can't. I don't really have time to sit there and link all that stuff. But if I have somebody here to give direction to, and just to overlook and say, yeah, link that one, and then I can go ahead and do little video vignettes of these things, so that it gives people an overview. I mean, that's kind of what needs to be done here. It's a tremendous amount of work.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, this. I know it needs to be done, and it has to be done, and it will get done. It's just I was hoping sooner than later. But again, until I process through the rest of these IRS forms and get that part of it done, then all these other things that are lagging behind that lead up to this are suffering by not getting done. If you know what I mean. That makes sense.
Well, you've given me a lot to look into from this podcast here. I'm dealing here with the county a bit with non-responses, but they're in administrative default. They're actually in distraint for a year, and I'm wondering if I should foreclose on the.
Well, I think you know what to do, and this is what I've been telling people. I think what people need to start doing at this point in time is you need to inform them of what you know. And that you need to inform them that, hey, I'm rolling through Treasury. I'm going to collapse your tax shelters, and if you want to keep on persisting, if you insist on coming after me, fine, you may get away with it. But know for a fact that I'm not going to be coming after you. The federal government will be coming at you. It may not be today, but they're going to come after you because I'm exercising my administrative remedies and processes that you've been denying me. If they want to ignore that, then that's their problem. But I think we need to put that information out to them to give them something to think about.
Well, let them think about it, and then actually follow through with with the U.S. attorneys and post that stuff there to where.
No, let them do that. Let them do that. No, let the federal government go after them. Yeah. That's the nicety of this. Let them go after them. That's not, let them do it. Because once you roll in the Treasury and you show them, and you make that claim, and you collapse these tax shelters, what you're showing them is essentially that they're taking federal public money from private persons, and really you've given the federal government all the reason it needs to exercise dominion over the state. Because now you've shown that they violate your constitutional rights, and you've done that by making that conversion into Treasury. Let them go after them.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it. I mean, I think to me it's like I have a lot of anger and hatred in my heart for these people too. But I would rather clear my accounts and go sailing, and go live life, and let them deal with them.
I never did have any animosities. I put everything on automatic pay. I mean, I just said here, I went by the aspect that I want to support the library and I want to support this and that, and so I just put it in escrow and I said, I don't even, and I just paid it, and it, and I've got a few $1 million worth of. And I just was paying the tax on it, and then but they stole from me. When they stole from me, then thinking about it,
and they did that through the shelters. Now, and see, so what you're now you bring up a perfect example of Treasury. Treasury is, if you look in their regulations and their guidelines, I mean, they plainly state in there that they are fully operational under the common law, and that a man should get in what he puts, or get back out what he puts into it. And if he's not getting back out what he put in, then he has claims, and we will act on them.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have, substantiated the claims.
Because, you understand, you're not going to get anywhere with them in this state at this point in time unless you get them to understand. Now, like I said, a lot of these people have no freaking clue, so you got to kind of educate them a little bit. But I think if you go in with the language and the assertiveness of saying, hey, listen, I know what's going on here. I've done my homework. I know that these are all tax shelters. I know that you're benefiting from them. I know that that you're benefiting off of my copyright, which I never gave authorization for, and that I'm exercising my administrative processes through the federal government, through Treasury, and the IRS. I think that if we use language like that, and if they don't understand it, you definitely give them pause to at least think about what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I haven't made that particular approach, but I've gotten a lot of good info tonight, and I appreciate that, and thank you for your time doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for listening. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Because, it's all beneficial to all of us. We all need to, sort of step up, define who we are and who we're not.
Yeah.
And
I think I think we've been deceived for so many years. It's time to get off that bus. I mean, that bus is gone. We've got to get off of it. And I think that we're on the right path. I know that we're on the right path.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
Very good. Do we have anyone else in the queue there that has questions or comments?
Yes, we have one. I'll go ahead and add them. I had a question for the host. This is Marshal Schubert. Are you trying to log in another format, Ken?
What do you mean?
Well,
what do you mean,
I keep
log in on another format?
I keep having somebody trying to log in, and they're using your name. I just want to make sure it wasn't you.
I'm on the phone right now. I'm not even on the computer.
I've been steady kicking them.
Huh.
Oh, well, okay.
I don't know.
Somebody's posing
I'm not
as
even
you,
near my
Ken.
computer right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring the next caller up. Next caller, last four is 88966.
Yeah, hello?
Hello?
Yeah, how you doing? Calling from New Jersey, Lamont.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm all right. Yeah, I just appreciate all the knowledge you guys are giving out. You know, it's kind of crazy to me, man, once you get into this knowledge, you know, it's like, oh, man, and, you know, you get angry.
Yeah.
Like, man, what the hell is going on? But, you know, I've been told that, you know, you can't really get angry. You know, you use that anger in a positive manner and just, you know, learn how to maneuver around it. But, you know,
well, you got to go through that. You're going to get angry and you're going to get furious. But yeah, at some point in time, what you're going to do, you're going to become more empowered by it. You're going to feel better because you know once you see the world as it really operates, you're going to feel a lot better about it, and it'll be easier to maneuver.
Yeah, definitely, because you know, I've been in court situations to where, you know, I put paperwork in and the judge tells me, you know, I can't talk to you and, you know, this and that, and, you know, they make you get a public defender, and then the public defender recuses themselves, so you get a pool attorney who still works for the public defender office, and, you know, it's just a lot of running.
And they can't do
around.
anything for you. I mean, they're doing you more damage than good.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean, that's what I'm seeing, because, you know, I've asked these attorneys about accepting a fiduciary position as far as, you know, doing as I say, giving them contracts, you know, stating that they are not representing me, they're just being a mouthpiece, and, you know, they're acting as if they don't know what's going on. You know, I ask them questions like, is this an article, what kind of court is it, an Article 1, or Article 3, you know,
I don't know.
They, you know, and I wouldn't say they don't know, but, you know, they're more like, it seems like they're playing the game, and they know what angle I'm coming at, but it's like, you know, he doesn't know enough, so let's play with him, you know.
Well, let me give you a little something to think about. A lot of these attorneys and a lot of these the capacity that they're operating under various types of trademarks, whatever trademark that is. It could be a financial good, it could be a service of some sort, whether it's as a defense attorney or in whatever capacity. All of these are trademarks at some point in time, and underneath the trademarks there is where their security agreements are, and in every one of these, what they've done here, and this is real important and I'll post up a few of these. I've already got a lot posted on my mortgage page, but I'll post up some so that they're up front so people can see them right away. What these contracts entail, and what it literally says in there, it says that we're the grantors, and we grant to whomever it is, whomever the trademark is, the company is, or law firm is, exclusive rights to our common law copyright, trademark, trade name for their exclusive use, and for the one that I saw from Aquin said for the pleasures and profits of legal representatives. That's what we exist for, and this is right in front of it, black and white, within these copyrights. So that's how they see us. They see us as a profit wheel for them, and that's all we are.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree, because I think, you know, I heard you talking before. I may have seen a couple of your posts on there. You know, they're definitely making money off of you, and you know, the name is what they're trying to access just to get a hold of your credit. And, you know, when you bring that stuff up to them, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, where are you getting that from?
Well, some of them don't. I mean, some of them honestly don't. I mean, there's some of our attorneys out there just don't know this stuff. But there's a lot out there that do. But even attorneys that don't know about it, they're still abiding by certain rules and of engagement, so to speak, that they're not even aware of. I mean, like a lot of these foreclosure mill attorneys, they don't have a clue about any of this stuff. They're completely clueless. They're fresh out of college. They're wet behind the ears, and they're handed a computer-generated a court case or court summons, and here, go file this. And they really believe that they're foreclosing on somebody who is a negotiable instrument. So I know the attorney in HSBC, he didn't know he had no clue what I was talking about. Now, rightfully speaking, that he should have been removed from the case, but of course it doesn't work that way because the way the courts are rigged. But it's all compartmentalized. It's very highly compartmentalized. So that's what we do have a benefit here.
Yeah, and like in one of my cases, it was a quasi criminal because it was no a motor vehicle situation, but it's mandatory, so it's statutory legislation, and they direct me to the motor vehicle code and the criminal code to look that up and try to fight it. But I overheard them speaking, and the prosecutor told him, it's cut and dry. He ran off the numbers where it's mandatory, this and that, but it's under statutory. So getting the study bug that I have, which I'm blessed, I'm grateful for. What does cut and dry mean? Cut and dry means clearly decided, settled in advance, and completed without debate, question, or argument.
Right.
So
and that's all their processes. That's all their statutory codes and statutes procedures.
Yeah, and it's like a bill of attainder. It's like if you're already guilty. So that's what happens. Even if you're arrested without probable cause or anything for a ticket, because the cop, you're not cooperating with them, and then they put you under arrest, you bring up these things to them and say, well, look, are you operating under the Constitution? Oh, I don't have to answer any of that. You performing a bill of attainder, which is definitely against any Constitution. You're going against it because that's what it states according to your law, and if you took an oath to it, you need to uphold it. But, it's just a word game, and that's the thing, like what I was saying, what gets you upset, anything you say can and will be used against you, but you don't, they speak in their legalese term, and even these officers on the side of the road and in the courtrooms, they're trained to get you to say certain words that, attach, that put these latches on you, and you're like, well, you don't want to speak. And then it's like, all right, they got codes in there for somebody not speaking. You know what I mean? Just silence is acquiescent.
Right.
And then,
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean that's where they see. That's where I think I was talking to a gal earlier today about sheriffs, and I think that's where there's wiggle room here. First of all, you ask them what their bond is. You start asking questions about their bond, and they start getting nervous. But second of all is that these guys are operating under, and you said it yourself, they're operating under guidelines that were given to them to operate under. But a lot of these guys, I mean, if we're talking in terms of mortgages or identities and how these things are working, a lot of these guys, these boots on the ground guys, they go home, they got kids, they got mortgages. I think that what we got to start doing is we got to start making the connection to them and breaking down the barrier and saying, hey, do you realize that the same thing's happening to you here? And make that connection with them. I think we got to break down barriers in that sense. Of course, there's going to be some cops out there just assholes and aren't going to deal with any of this stuff. But I think that there's a connection there that can be made, and I think it's an important connection to be made, because at the end of the day, if you can connect with the ordinary person, even the sheeple out there, that hey, we're not dealing with birth certificate issues here. We're not dealing with all this fantastical stuff where you look at me and think I'm crazy. We're dealing with something very simple here, and that's the monetization of your signature, that's going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, and when I sign stuff, I always put all rights reserved.
Yes.
And, I heard them laughing at it. They're like, oh, you all right reserving it again. Like, and, you sitting there and you listening to them, and, you trying not to be belligerent or like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, they're trying to get you to bust out the sovereign citizen stuff so they could really bust your ass.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's just, it's a lot of studying with this stuff to be even able to get into it, because, they're considered actors. They call you an actor.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, well, I'm not an actor, and they want you to put on a mask and wear that And like you said, with that signature, that's the only thing that they're trying to get you to release by signing a piece of paper, and it turns into an instrument. They're not, all of this stuff is not disclosed. This can turn into a negotiable instrument without my knowledge, and it's floating all over the place, and somebody's making money off of it, and I'm still being held accountable for it. And even if you put me in a slammer or something like that, you still making money off, and they want you to sign stuff in there, and it's like, you know, it's a big game, man. And that's why
I think it's important. I think it'll make it easier for people. I'm thinking that this is my thought. I think it'll make it easier for people to take this path as far as understanding how these all daylight and tax shelters and what these tax shelters are actually made of, and how those things are derived. Because once you understand that, then you understand that. Then when you look at these guys, the way they're operating and the way they're talking and whatnot, you have a better understanding. Hey, this is all commerce. This is just business.
And that's how, and like, you know, I've been looking at it, and like, you know, the thing is, you got to clear your brain from the old foolishness, you know, to let the new stuff in. You know what I mean? So, and it's kind of like if you get a ticket, the guy is a complainant. And the complainant, in their definition, is someone bringing suit. So you're being sued by this complainant. But on the complainant, he has a title, and he's an agent for an agency. So, you know, you investigate all of that, and it's like, well, the law of agency, you say, okay, well, let me look that up. All right. The agent is acting on behalf of the agency, which has a principal. So who is the principal? Now, the principal is the one that's supposed to be enriched from this. He's the one that I'm really violating.
And who's the real principal?
Yeah, exactly. And
you're the real principal. And this all goes back. This is why you're the principal secured party. You've got somebody that has come in to act as your principal to make decisions on your behalf, which of course is not for your benefit at all. It's for their benefit. So it's a biased system to begin with, and they're the ones that are making the decisions for you.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I've learned that, like, you know, through studies, that, you know, who's here acting on anyone acting on my behalf assumes all liability, because I haven't authorized anyone to access. You know what I'm saying? And you say stuff like that to them, they like, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
okay, we'll come back.
I think it's a better approach than sitting there saying that I'm the living man or a sovereign citizen. I mean, that doesn't get us anywhere, really. I think when you approach it this way, I mean, you start talking in the language you just spoke. I mean, that gets their attention, because you know, if they don't know what the hell you're talking about, they're gonna be scratching their head thinking, shit, he kind of knows what he's talking about. Maybe we should, you know?
Yeah, because you know, like you said, it's an identity theft. You know, once your name is put on a piece of paper, and they're coming to you for some type of something you owe them, you know what I mean? Somebody
and that's really important to understand, because the things that are going on, all this stuff that's going on in the past 20 years, it didn't really go on. I mean, it's been going on to some degree, but not like it is in the past 20 years. And the reason for that, the very specific reason for that, has to do with the revisions to UCC 9, the collateralization of copyrights and intellectual properties, where they can take your signature and they can put a value to it. And as long as they can put a value to it and market it and sell it, it's a financial instrument. And that's really why we see what's going on here, is because everything's a revenue stream now, and it's your signature that's driving these things. That didn't happen prior to 1998.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I really, you know, like, I'm a new guy to it, but, you know, it's coming to me. You know, I consider myself very bright, but, you know, this is a whole different ball game. But, you know, I start signing my name different. I mean, you know, in the hospital, all rights reserved without prejudice. They come back like, what is this? We can't accept that. No, you got to sign it different. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Oh, I have to sign it how you want me to sign it? That's my autograph.
You know, I got a question there. I'm going to make a note of it to put it up on my mortgage page. It's a great questionnaire that you hand to any public officer or actor or police officer, anybody who kind of gives you hassle about it, and it's a questionnaire that they have to answer. So you hand it to them, and they're going to shy away instantly, because it asks them all kinds of questions that they're, as an officer of the or an agency, they're required to answer.
Yeah,
and so you give them so you put them on the spot basically, and really everything it has to do with everything we're dealing with here is kind of flipping it around to where it's not our bond, it's their bond, and risk management on their part, risk assessment on their part, because once you get them to think about their bonds and the risk management part of it, then they start getting nervous.
Yeah. Because I mean, I have even asked, as far as like the signature stuff is concerned, when I told, you have to sign yourself out or be bailed out of jail, and you have to sign paperwork for them to let you out, putting you to it. You reserved your right to bail bondsman, asking you all of that. But I've asked the lawyer, so why did I have to bail out of jail? What is it for? This isn't the bail was outrageous, and I mean it wasn't a major crime or anything. So what is that, like a lien on my body when I signed it? He said, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I was like, okay.
It's a reason for them to tap your spendthrift, your trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reason for them, and it's a reason for them to do it tax free. That's the biggest thing about this. This again. Now we're going to tax shelters. Whenever they can tap into one of us and take something from us that takes from our credit account, that's a credit for them.
Yeah, and aren't you should be able to ask them for a 1099 or something like that?
Yeah, you can do that, but be careful with that though, because you do the 1099. The 1099 OID is not for us. The 1099A is, but the 1099 OID is not for us. We're not in that capacity. There's other forms for other 1099s for us to fill out. The miscellaneous, and I think the one that we really want to fill out is the interest, because we're due the interest that was paid on that, and those are the ones that we should be filing. And all these things become more clear as they come out more and become more delineated. But yes, I mean that's the process that you're going to go through. Another thing you do is just if you're in a foreclosure, one of the things you can do is just accept it. Don't give any controversy. Just accept it. Tell them that you'll pay it, and then do a charge back through Treasury. But again, those things too, though, have changed a little bit, and those are the things I'm working through here now that changed in January of 2017. So I think it's going to become even easier once we get these processes down. But the point being is in some cases, just give them what they want, and then let them tap your account, give it to them, and then go back and hit them on the IRS charge and let the IRS go after them.
Okay, but see now, what if what they want if they only offering you jail time? Those are your only options. Then. Yeah, exactly. And then you ask them about the bonds, trying to retrieve bonds and stuff like that, which I'm not too familiar with. So I don't know it, so I haven't done it. Even asking them for a 1099, I just threw that out there. But when they give you these ultimatums, it's like. It's either this, and then they tell you only got two choices, and that's it. It's like, you got to be kidding me. So, I mean, what do you mean? Are we going to go to trial? So, I mean, if you take it to trial, the same similar way you're treating me now is going to happen at trial, but y'all just going to go through the motions again and charge me more and then give me more of a sentence because of going to trial. So
exactly. Yeah, either take the plea or go to trial and take a chance with that, and the chances are you're going to go way longer.
Exactly. So and I have told them, like I've offered. I said I offered discussion. I'm willing to try to settle this matter privately, or but they're like, well, no, we can't do that. This is the only way we do it, And
well, I think that's where it comes when you become more knowledgeable on the Treasury aspects and especially the tax shelter aspects, and the fact that you can reverse this on them, and because once you kick the principal off his chair and put yourself there, then they lose all power. All of a sudden, what you've done now is you've basically called the hedge on them. And now where you were the surety, now they're the surety. Now they're the ones that are on the cuff. And I think that as we learn more about that, and as we learn how to apply that more, that'll give us a lot more power and detract from a lot of these outrageous things that they're doing.
Okay, well, yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'm gonna yield the floor, so I'll probably contact you, man, and just refer to the conversation we had tonight out on through a message or something like that. But I appreciate it, man, and Keep up the great work, man, because I'm studying, man. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we have others out there that have questions or would like to add to, comment. Anybody out there? Well, this has been a...
Yeah. One thing. The previous your previous guy that you had on there. I've got a pretty good item of presentments that can answer a lot of his questions. If he's going to have to go to a situation where he's going to be going in front of in a court situation that would help him out. I do believe, anyway. I mean, maybe if I posted that on the Facebook page or something.
That'd be fine. Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, that would be a good way to handle that. Yes.
It has to do with presentments, and it has to, placing a bond in the court going in, and using your A4V, using your exemption bond with the Treasury.
Right. But you got to be careful with that, though, because, like I said, they've changed a lot of those regulations, it's not so cut and dry anymore. I don't think. I think it's actually going to be easier once we go through these and learn these processes. It's going to be a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, I got the same thing. I got same thing with a chargeback. But at the same time, though, we got to be careful because how they, if they're going to work at all anymore.
Well, yeah, that's true. But they're still, that judge is still sitting there with his bond, with his account in his office, waiting for him to, be found guilty. If he goes in there and basically pleads guilty to the facts of the case, he goes in as authorized representative, and guilty to the facts, and he has a bond already.
Well, also, too, and to add to that, yes, I agree with you. And to add to that, make sure that you formally or put a statement and affidavit removing all powers of attorney and appointing yourself. Like you said, as authorized representative, I would say attorney in fact. So this way he's occupied that intermediary position. He's not acting as all caps, and he's not acting as this living man. He's acting as the representative of both.
Right. And the bond that he goes in with, if he posts it and does an A4V on the bond, making so he takes control of the basically of his exemption account that the judge has in his office. So he's already, as the private man, taken.
If they agree with it, that's the problem. I mean, some judges will agree with it, others won't. That's the problem, is getting these guys to agree to it. Now rightfully, they have to agree to it. And I think that as this goes on, they're not going to have a choice but to agree to these things. But, of course, what you're doing when you do that, what are you taking away from these guys? You're taking away the interest from them. And that's what they want. Those bonds are all interest. It's all tax-free interest to them.
Yeah.
So you're basically what you're doing is you're taking away their double dipping, which is a good thing actually for us, but it's not so much for them. But so I mean, again, it goes back into how much knowledge we have on these guys and these processes. But yeah, I mean, I feel presentment is a beautiful way to go with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll take that into consideration because I know I have asked before. Well, I was told, what reasons do you have me in here for? What I haven't injured anyone or whatever. Well, New Jersey has an interest, and I didn't know how to come at that. Where from reading it further, that's what I wanted. I should have got them. Yeah, exactly. Point of clarification. Exactly. Point of clarification. What do you mean interest? You like me? Oh, what I mean. What interest is it specifically? And that's where, I think I would have caught them. But, it's like a learning process you go through. And because, like, I hear a lot of times when you do go into these courtrooms, you will have access to an out to where you can get through it by their words or, just call them or what they're saying. You know what I mean? Like, am I to understand right now that the judge is making the judicial, determination that New Jersey, it's an interest involved here? What type of interest is that?
Well, a lot of these cases, too, they're acting, these judges, and this is really how they're acting. I mean, they're acting under international codes and standards, Admiralty Maritime, of course, but they're acting as an administrator of royalties. So what they're doing is they're administering the royalties for that are going to spread out over the basis of these bonds or whatever instruments are out there, and that's a matter for administrative. And so if you're going to deal administrative, it should be done on the administrative side, and they're basically impeding your due process rights and equal protection by not allowing you to go ahead and exercise those remedies.
Right.
Okay. Yes, my question is that. The Emancipation Proclamation is the abolition of slavery, and I'm wondering, is there a way to strategically use this in a courtroom against any cases on debt or even a criminal case?
I wouldn't use any of that. I wouldn't use any of that. I would roll. I mean, you're already in a slavery situation anyhow. Roll it over through Treasury and get your constitutional rights and let them go after it. Let them address it. I mean, you've got to be in, and this is one thing I've learned about after all these years, and after going through the court process myself and not understanding it at that time, is that everything is administrative, everything. And if it's administrative, then and we're dealing with slavery, especially that MERS Nations Bank Agreement. The only way to adjudicate this is to go to its hub source. And if we're talking about now, think of what they've done here. I mean, they've eviscerated common law, and the only way for us to really get anywhere and get any kind of rights whatsoever or get constitutional on the soil is through Treasury. Treasury is their main focus, their main purpose is to balance or take care of the finances of the United States. So if we're talking about, and of course, we're talking about slavery, we're talking about bonds, we're talking about money, we're talking about commerce. And in order to get those rights back and secure those rights to eviscerate that slavery contract, the only way that I really, really see it happening is rolling through Treasury and putting them to work for us. That's the only standing that you have to be able to even reach common law.
How would I go about that? Because I know there is this Emancipation Proclamation, and our president was assassinated for this, and there must have been a reason that they did it.
Well, it's a matter. Well, it was what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the 1895 or 1897 General Allotment Act, which has to do with which is slavery in it's Blackacre, which was operating after the Reconstitution or Reconstruction after the Civil War. I mean, it's all a matter of the persons that have a higher intellect or have higher sophistication exercising their superior powers over those that don't have the information, that are lacking of information, whether it be by ignorance or by, well, in most cases, in all cases, by information that's not being disclosed.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, everything we're dealing with, and I'd say that's what really amazes me about when I opened up these IRS tax shelters. What really amazed me about all this, what really amazed me about all of these, even the patents, what amazes me about it is really all based on presumption. I mean, we blindly allowed others to take care of us and think that they were going to do so with credibility and honor, and of course they sold us out, and we acquiesced. we didn't acquiesce. We fell asleep. We ignored it, and we let them run with the house, and that's what they've done. But they've done it, and they can't do these things. Everything that they're doing is a constitutional violation. But because they've instituted all these codes and statutes and basically wiped out common law, the only way that we can really restore ourselves is to go back to that. And the only way to do that is to roll back through Treasury and kind of reverse that copyright to where it's not a copyright that enslaves us as it is now, as it's being used against a gentleman in New Jersey. But we've got to roll it back to where it's a shared copyright, to where we have the master control of it. And that's the only way that I can see this happening.
Well, how do you go about attacking the Treasury with that constitutional right?
Well, you don't really attack. You don't attack them. You don't have to attack them. What I did was I just went through and I did a declaration of life and status, and I declared myself as not a state national, because you don't want to be a state national because it's the states that are fucking you. We want to be an American national, and because we're a collection of states, and underneath that collection of states are individual states that are foreign to us, that makes us a foreign national, and we want to be an American national that's foreign because one, I mean, it proves out here within the tax shelters. I mean, that's where you get all your that's where you're tax exempt and you've got all superior powers and whatnot. So I did a declaration of life and status. I did a notice of termination. In my case, I fired MERS, and I terminated, and I claimed my copyright, my common law copyright, and I terminated all licenses. Now, you have to understand that a mortgage, and keep in mind that we're not talking about a mortgage, we talk about mortgages, we think it has to do with real property, and it's rooted in real property, and that's not true. A mortgage is derived out of copyright law. So there's all different kinds of mortgages. There's mortgages to patents, there's mortgages to trademarks, there's all different kinds of or mortgages. We've been hoodwinked or made to believe that a mortgage is specific to real property. Well, that's not true. A mortgage is rooted in copyright. So what they've done is they have put a cloud on our title. Now, this applies to whether it's a motor vehicle or credit cards or whatever, anything has title to it. They put a cloud on that title by a system of licenses. Now, by the operation of law, this is operation of law under copyright. When a person claiming ownership of copyright, terminates all licenses, by operation of law, title reverts back to the person claiming copyright. That's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty simple when you think about it. It's cut and dry. Now, enforcing that is another matter. I mean, you're obviously not going to enforce these things in the state courts. I mean, or in the state or the county. You're not going to enforce these things because you have a system of codes and statutes where the judges are operating under Commonwealth, because it's international, because it's amateur maritime, and they're taking cognizance of federal law. So they're basically scoffing at federal law, essentially. So the only place that you can really do this kind of a claim is in the federal government, is within Treasury.
Yeah, my question, how would you do that, though? Do you just walk in and tell them?
I filed, like I said, I filed a notice of termination. I filed a declaration of status in life. In my case, I filed a statement of facts because I wanted to, because mine deals with mortgages, and I wanted to, and this is another important note to make, and it's a very important note to make. They know that we have all kinds of accounts tied to our name. They all know that, okay? We have to go in there and say that we've known this for a while and that we know that we have accounts and that we want to access those accounts. And the way to access those accounts is by removing the barriers and coming in proper capacity. Now, I served those papers by registered mail to, in my case, I served them all over town. I served Raul Maldonado, IRS, Puerto Rico, registered mail to Cheryl Morrow, which is the Commissioner of Fiscal Services, to Steve Munchin, the head of the Secretary of Treasury, and I also copied, CC'd by first-class mail, all 20 heads of the Departments of Fiscal Services. So I put them all on notice. And I also did a $1 million or $100 million investment bond, which is different than an indemnity bond. It's an investment bond because I know that my identity is being collateralized and making a whole shitload of money for somebody else. And so what I've done is I did a 30-year future investment bond, and I put that in. So I also put in, I actually asked for three things. I asked, one, that Fiscal Services determines the Series EE bonds for my birth certificate so that I get those reissued so I can liquidate them and take those monies. Two, to fire MERS and to adjudicate and administrate and take over the administration of all the MERS, all the accounts of MERS and all that attached to that. And three, a business agreement for a 30-year investment bond. So I made him a business offer. Now, I don't know if you heard me earlier, I haven't heard back from Fiscal Services yet, but I heard back from the IRS. And the IRS telling me, well, get your filings in order, get them caught up, and so we can do a proper assessment, do a FOIA so that we can open up the accounts. So that's how you do it.
What? So that easy?
Well, I'm not saying it's that easy. I mean, we still got to get them to respond. The point is,
that's pretty rare.
Huh?
Isn't it rare for the IRS to respond to anybody, though?
No, the IRS is actually responding to a lot of people. I mean, they're responding to a lot of people and saying, well, you're frivolous, and they're threatening to just levy $5,000 penalties. And they're doing that because we're not going in proper capacity. So the IRS, and let me tell you a secret about the IRS. The IRS, let me tell you a secret about a bunch of things. The IRS, the SEC, FINRA, Customs Border Protection, they all know that we're the equity owners. They all know that we're the beneficiaries. They know this, and they're sick and tired of what's going on. They're really sick and tired of it, and they've been putting nuggets out. The IRS has been putting nuggets out for the past several years, trying to get people to correct their status, and they're doing it through their publications. The problem is you and I and everybody else is we're fighting this at a whole different level because we're looking at codes and statutes, and we're not giving them the attention that we should be, and they can't. It's not like they can come out and announce it to us because they can't do that. Why? Because they've got their own confidentiality agreements. They've got their own in-house codes or regulations to where they can't come out and say anything to us. They can't do anything until we go to them in proper standing to initiate their responsibility. The same thing with the SEC. The same thing with Customs and Border Protection. They've all been putting those nuggets out there. It's just that none of us have been looking at it. So what I'm saying to you is this going to be cut and dry, easy and simple? I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm sure that Fiscal Service. I'm sure that there's going to be some hiccups there because of the fact that what we're talking about here is immense. I mean, the magnitude of what we're talking about is totally immense. They don't want people knowing all these things so that we do essentially like a run on the bank. That's what they're trying to avoid, and I understand that. I get that. And for a while there, I kind of thought, well, I agree with that. Maybe this should be done secretively. But the more that I've delved into this, the angrier I've got, really, and the more forthright I got with, well, wait a second here. It's not fair that a few people with knowledge can go through and do this whole private process and get a black card and go live their lives in luxury, and other people can't. And it's not fair. And I determined that, and I came to that realization when I found all of these tax shelters. I thought, wait a second here. There's no big secret here. We're not violating any trade secret here, because what you've got here is you've got filings that are essentially there for the public record in terms of patents, in terms of copyrights, trademarks. All this shit is out there. There are no bank secrets because everything's patented. The problem is that we're not looking in the right spot. We're looking elsewhere. So all I'm doing is saying, hey, guys, let's look over here. And then what we do is we just follow the administrative process. Like I said, these tax shelters, you get into these things, it tells you clear as day who you are. I mean, there's one filing in the IRS, I think it's the passive investment one that defines what defines what a collateral guarantor is. Well, you crack open these trademark agreements of Aquin and Bank of America and all these loan servicers and banks and everything, and in the preamble, it defines us as the grantors and it defines that we are the collateral guarantors, but they define us as the debtors. Well, the IRS takes a different view on that. The IRS has clearly stated that collateral guarantors are not debtors. They're creditors. Well, if that's what we're defined as within these agreements of Aquin and all these banks, there's a misnomer here because the IRS sees us as creditors, and that's what we truly are. So see, everything's there. It's just that we've got to look at it, and we haven't put our attention to it. We've tried to we've tried to do all these processes to throw this paperwork into a black hole and hope that it comes back and, we get our remedy. Well, bullshit. Let's bullshit with that. Let's just go get our remedy. It's right there. All we've got to do is look at it and apply the paperwork.
Hey, Ken?
Yes.
How are you feeling?
I'm good.
Awesome.
I know, I get going.
Awesome. Well, it's all good. I just wanted to make sure that you were, where you were. It's almost 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here. So I just wanted to make sure that you wanted to continue, or you wanted to take a break, or.
We can go. Let's go on for a few more minutes, and then we'll call it a night.
Okay. All right. Well.
Actually, let me read you something here. I got something here that maybe will give you a little bit more clarity on what we're dealing with patents here. And this is one that particularly bothers me. It's a foreign, non-qualified, deferred compensation hybrid trust strategy. So what they're doing here, this is what they're describing here, is they're describing a deferred compensation trust that's going to pay out to basically pay out life insurance policies to that should come to us to brokers and third-party other criminals and crooks. And what they're saying here, and this is very interesting. This goes to a gentleman too in New Jersey. Will want to take note of this. It describes it as a hybrid trust. And it says the hybrid trust is a trust that is registered in a foreign jurisdiction, but also qualifies as a U.S. trust for IRS purposes. In order for the trust to qualify as a hybrid trust, it must provide, 1, that a U.S. court can exercise primary supervision over trust assets over the administration of the trust, and 2, a U.S. person has authority to control all substantial decisions of the trust, i.e., principal trustee. The trust instrument can provide that the trust will be governed by the law of the foreign jurisdiction in which the trust is registered, so long as the trust instrument states that the administration of the trust will take place in the United States. What does that tell you? Anybody?
Sorry, I was muted. Well, and basically, it's it in the Q&A. So, if you want, I can go ahead and end that, and it would open everybody's mic.
Yeah, just open. Yeah, you open everybody's mic.
Repeat some of that, Ken.
I thought you fell asleep. You're still there.
Can you hear us?
Huh?
Okay. Go ahead.
I said the hybrid trust. This is very important. This is really important to grasp what they're saying here, because this is the manipulation that's being performed through.
They're basically saying, as a foreign entity, they're giving the U.S. third party, whoever they hire, authority to administer it.
Well, what they're saying here is they're saying they can go ahead and create this hybrid trust that as long as the U.S. court can administrate over it. So basically, what they've done is they've taken away because it's a foreign trust. Remember, we're talking about a trust. We're talking about assets. There are assets that they're basically stripping away from us and putting them in the hands of U.S. court and a principal trustee that is directed by, in all cases, directed by Delaware. And it goes on further to talk about what they're doing with these trust instruments is they're creating instruments of an irrevocable life insurance policy to which, because it's being administered by the U.S. court system or a U.S. Trustee, appointed trustee, that's where the benefits are going. So it tells you right there what it's really telling what they're doing, because it's right here in black and white. What they're saying is they're saying we have fixed the system so that you are subjects of us, and that we're administering over you, and what we're administering to and what we're taking benefit of is irrevocable life insurance policy. That's your estate. That's their profit wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's real important. It's real important you understand these patents, and that's what's important about these patents. These patents are. There's no. You think of patents. Now some of them are algorithmic processes and complex algorithms and so on and so forth. But a lot of these patents are just written words. And Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, whomever. What they're doing is they're making up a game essentially, and they're creating the law as they want to write it. And it's supported by, of course, bar attorneys and substantiated through these codes and statutes, which are what? It's all administrative. It tells you right here. Tells you right in the patent.
When was that patent made?
That was 2009.
So if I challenge their standing to be in court and their authority under this, sorry, this is Renee in Texas. I think you knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Got this damn case and went to my first hearing, and the judge is wanting me to, I didn't motion for them to show their authority, so that's what I'm putting into place right now, but is that going to blow this out?
Well, I would definitely challenge their authority. I would definitely challenge the fact of why are we even here? I mean, you went in for like a TRO, right? Or did you put a whole case in against him?
I put a whole case in, but he's asking me to replete it because I didn't put enough evidence in. I just need cause 1, 2, and 3.
I would back away from that, and I would just have him give you the TRO on preventing the servicer from moving forward until you exercise your administrative processes, and that's all you want. Because technically speaking, you're really premature, and you really shouldn't have filed. Nobody should file any kind of case. The bank shouldn't even be filing any kind of case because nobody's exercised their administrative remedies and their processes. And it's only when after you exhaust all administrative remedies that and haven't gotten any that you really should be filing a case. In your case, it would just be basically, hey, judge, just file a temporary restraining order preventing Aquin or whomever from moving forward with any kind of foreclosure.
They already foreclosed, Ken, and the bank bought it back.
Yeah, the bank bought it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bank bought it back, but you're still there though.
The judge, yes, I am, 9/10 of the law. The judge has, but see, they make the sheriff a temporary sub-trustee and exercise the administration of the trust and,
go after his bond.
Evict.
Can I jump in?
Go after his bond.
Hello? Couldn't you do a void judgment on this?
I'm the plaintiff.
Well, yeah, but
yeah.
The judgment is that they took your property.
Mm-hmm.
Do a void judgment on and try to get a response. If they don't give you a response, then.
Well, you hold them in dishonor at that point in time, and then actually, what I would do, I would just go ahead and just say, well, but you're in a kind of a backward situation there. I would really just have the judge do a temporary restraining order and to prevent any kind of eviction, stop any kind of eviction, let you exercise your administrative remedies, and you'll be back if you need to. Because right now, at this point in time, you just who cares who they sold it to? I mean, my house was sold to an insurance broker in Georgia 6 months or a year ago, and I'm still here. What you want to do at this point in time is you want to prevent them from moving on you to evict you from your house. And as long as you can do that, then you're in good shape, so you can go ahead and exercise your administrative processes. And if you don't get any remedy on that, then you come back and sue them on tortious interference. Now you got a case.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, who cares if they sold it? You're still there. That's what matters. You'll get all that money back when you go ahead and adjudicate it administratively, because once you flip the coin on it, then you go ahead and have the IRS or do them yourself or the 1099 process and any of the other tax shelter process and let them go after them. And then you'll get that money back. You'll get it back as a chargeback.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be through the IRS. It could be just through an implementation of a cause of action they might just settle through their system through their
doubtful though. It's doubtful though.
Yeah, that maybe.
That's doubtful because they want that interest.
Yeah, well, that yeah. Well,
but also too, though, she doesn't have a judgment. They went ahead and sold the house. So I mean, it was sold by all intents and purposes through private parties. So it's not anything that's on the docket for a judgment.
Yeah. No, the bank bought it back, and so, well, let me just say, the judge has set the trial for a year from now.
Oh, well, okay. Well, so you're good then. They're not going to move on the house. They can't move on the house. You got an active court action, so they can't go ahead and evict you.
Exactly.
So I mean, in that sense, it's good. I mean, you don't want to be in court anyhow. I mean, the reason why I wanted to go into court was just to get a temporary restraining order, and so to keep you there, so they can't evict you. Let them go ahead and let them do what they're doing behind the scenes, because it's going to come back and bite them administratively.
Just need to research all your options for the administrative process. The study. It's mostly study. You need to really know exactly how to implement the administrative process to these people, and do it in a straightforward, non-accusatory, just basically you're telling them the facts. But
we're going. But I see what you're saying. But what I'm saying is we just go for the gusto and you just collapse the whole damn thing. Just collapse the whole damn thing in Treasury. Collapse the tax shelters. Take the trust and everything. I see what you're saying about administrative. You can do that. But yeah, you got to be on the ball on everything you do with the administrative process. But this is kind of like the beeline saying, screw all that shit. I'm going right for the gusto here, because I want to just collapse all the accounts. I know what's going on here. I know where the accounts are. I know what under shelters they're under. I know that I'm the principal party of these things. Let's go ahead and roll it through Treasury. Let's put the onus on them to go ahead and correct any kind of imbalances or balance corrections, and be done with it that way.
Well, they are trustees, and they have to administrate it as trustees, so they have to be held. They can be held accountable for everything that they do.
They can be held for treason at that point in time.
Right.
I mean, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, you go through you can do the Rod Class administrative process, and he's very successful with that. But at the same time, though, it's lengthy, and to me, I'm of the opinion, screw that. We know the direct route now. We know what the direct route is, and why piss around with all this stuff? Because it's just layers of. I mean, if you think about this administrative process, what is it? It's just another layer of commerce.
Well, since what 1930, it's all been uniform commercial. It's in that respect, it's all
right.
Has with contracts and contracts only. When people say that try to implement their constitutional rights or whatever in a court, they laugh at them, because basically they're admitting that that's sort of a treasonous thing, because it's not.
But it's not, though, at that point in time, because at that point in time you're incompetent, and you're subject to codes and statutes, and that's evident by you standing in a courtroom.
Right.
So I mean, so why deal with any of that shit? Let's just take it home, put us back on the soil, so that we do have our constitutional protections, and we do what we basically demand the ends of justice that can only be had there. It can only be had, and you're doing it with the department or the agency that is in charge of the finances.
Exactly. Yeah.
I hear that
part. Now you put the IRS in it. You're talking about, and don't kid yourself. The IRS they're pissed off. I mean, they're angry about all this thing. They want to get at these guys because there's trillions of dollars that has been taken out of this country essentially on our backs, and they can't do a frickin' thing about it until we make that connection. So give them the connection.
Right. Well, are we talking now? One thing I wanted to clarify. I think of it the internal revenue, not the IRS. The IRS is a agency. It isn't really the I.
Well, there's the IRS and there's the Internal Revenue Service. Yes, and the one is a back door right into Admiralty Maritime through forfeitures, through narcotics, Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms. And that's where they're hiding all the assets and taking all the assets as forfeitures.
Right. Well, but yeah, there's basically the collection arm of the Internal Revenue.
Right.
So whether this is where I'm doing an awful lot of studying as to how much involvement they have with the parent company, which would be the Internal Revenue. They're just a collection agency for the Internal Revenue Service.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a conflict there. And
well, you got the same thing with Treasury too, because you got Treasury Department, you got Department of Treasury. But I mean, all you're doing though is think of what you're doing. Even in the IRS, between the two, you're just balancing the books.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Is that not what you're doing? And you said it earlier. You said acquiescence is silence. So I mean, by our not questioning it, then we're allowing it to happen. So once we question it, we bring up our authority, which is really what you're doing there. They're obligated to abide, really. Otherwise, now they are facing treason at that point in time, because we have to have a remedy. There has to be a remedy.
I just want to make sure that I'm putting the treason on the right folks. In other words, there's the Internal Revenue, and then there's the Internal Revenue Service.
Right. Yeah. Right.
One is based in Puerto Rico. The Internal Service, Internal Revenue, basically, I don't.
Yeah, but I hate to tell you this, though. I mean, I think we need to rethink that, whether it's based in Puerto Rico or not. Because what is Puerto Rico? It's a Commonwealth.
What about the two entities?
Well, hold on a second. What is Puerto Rico? It's a Commonwealth. And what have they done with over 100 million mortgage instruments through MERS? They've made us all subjects of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So does it really matter whether it's Puerto Rico or Virginia? They're both Commonwealths.
Matter if they were in Venezuela. It's the point is what I was making is that it's a differentiation between the Internal Revenue and the Internal Revenue Service. In other words, they're two separate, complete entities.
Right. No, I realize that. Yes, I realize that. Same thing with Department of Treasury and Treasury Department. Absolutely. And yeah, you're right about who are you putting the treason on.
Exactly. Who are you basically putting this to? I mean, we could be putting this to a collection agency that would be governed under Title 15, and not just doing the same scam that they've done to most of the people, where they think that they're being done under, I think it's Title 26.
Title 26, yeah.
15. And Title 15 is this collection agency, Internal Revenue Service, whereas the other is the actual Internal Revenue. So they've done this little sleight of hand on where they've tried to get us to react to Title 26 when they're actually Title 15. In other words.
Well, and I think that's the nicety of cracking open these shelters, because these shelters give us the option. I mean, it really does. It gives us the option to define which agency it goes to. Really, I mean, if you break it down in terms like that.
Yeah. Well, that's it. In order to get them to listen and to be, you're right, have the right status and standing and all of that. And you have
and it's really hard for them not to listen when you fill out the forms, and because really what you're doing here is you're cracking an egg. And that egg is really our acquiescence, because that's really what it is. Because we've never brought up the issues, and when we start citing particular forms, and you can read the forms yourselves. I mean, it clearly states. I mean, in all these forms, it clearly states our delineation as a status, and it's our choice. So I think we define the role ourselves at that point in time. It becomes self-defining. It's self-authenticating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just it's all something that I've been studying it quite a bit and trying to decipher. And reading all the different articles and all the background laws and cases and all of that, and I try to figure out just exactly what information that is out there is the actual information that I should be using.
That's right.
And because there's a huge amount of disinformation, and And you know yourself, that you run into it continuously, probably from people trying to with disinformation. So
that's why I try to go to the source. I mean, because that's really where everything emanates from the source. Everything emanates from our root. And what is the root here? The root is identity. It's trademark and copyright. And,
right.
Our common law rights, and that's the hub of everything. That's our constitutional stuff. That's where everything's at. And so that's where the hub is at. So you got to go for the hub, and then you emanate out from that. And yeah, I agree with you. You can get all caught up on codes and statutes, but see, the codes and statutes really don't matter to us at that point in time, because we put ourselves above that. And I'll tell you, these tax shelters, when you really start reading into these tax shelters, I think that really will substantiate that, that hey, we do have the choice and to choose our status and to choose, to make all kinds of choices for ourselves. And it's there. It's right there in the tax shelters. So it's a matter of just going ahead and going to those tax shelters and making identification with them and drawing into proper standing and status with us and what we want to do with it. It really does come down to, and like I said at the beginning of the conversation, this goes back to the Fed and the OCC deregulation that basically said, banks, go ahead and you guys are self-authenticating, self-operating, self-governing. Well, okay, let's take a look at that. If we're an American national, and we go ahead and roll ourselves, and we're an accommodating party, which is what we are. That's our straw man, and that's the word we should be using, as accommodating party as opposed to straw man, because straw man is completely outdated. It's accommodating party, and we roll ourselves in as a transmitting utility. Well, what have we done? We've kind of flipped the coin on the matter, and that changes things for us. And it's really hard for them to go ahead and deny us any kind of, I don't want to say privilege is the wrong word, but for lack of better terms, privileges that are afforded us that are right there in their own freaking forms that we just never looked at.
Yeah, I just, I understand completely what you're saying about, going after the forms and submitting the forms and submitting their forms as for their... There's only one drawback that I have to the form situation, and I completely agree with the forms that you were talking about. Those are fantastic if they're going to work, but they're their forms. And
yes.
So what I'm thinking is that they've got their forms. Take their form, and not necessarily do it in the exact same format and the exact same, but take their form, copy it off on our own forms, our own affidavits that state the same things, away from one where they can say that you've become a part of agency. You've given us agency because you've used our form.
Yeah, but I agree with you to some degree. But then I kind of go off the rail when I think of the fact that we're dealing in an international market here. You're dealing with Unidrot, you're dealing with all kinds of other foreign tax treaties and so on and so forth. I don't think that the process is there to really, therefore using their forms is there to really screw us, because the forms are there for us to use. It's just that we're not using them, and that's the whole point. Is that we tend to think that they're going to come back and screw us, and they're going to come back and do this to us, and we're going to be obligated to them, and no, we're not. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is you're in a private contract trust, federal contract trust. You've got the Treasury's protection because you've got that shared copyright, and you're above codes and statutes, and nobody can touch you. Anybody tries touching you, you can level them and clean their clock. So I think we got to rethink about. I think we need to rethink about how devious or how evil the federal government is. I mean, yes, it is at this point in time, because we can't bring them into play because we got this because of states' rights, right? We haven't brought in we haven't given the feds enough data or enough evidence to show that our constitutional rights are being violated under codes and statutes that we're adhered to now. But once we roll over, then we do give that. So I think to some degree we got to have some kind of faith in the system. And at that point in time, I think we're going to be okay. I don't think it's going to come back and bite us. I mean, you can read the forms yourself. I mean, I want everybody to read the forms and make their own decision on it.
What I would do with those forms is I would take the forms and I would use my, and I would just for a test situation, I would use my own format, own forms with the same information, and submit them based on and refer to their form that they are sending out to people to, and because I am the executor of my estate, and I'm basically making a FOIA request of what their form is actually saying, and if the form is consistent, give me this, and that way it kind of takes you away from, in other words, you're doing a request for them to react, you're getting the same effect, maybe, but not becoming part of their jurisdiction.
But you're not. But it's okay to be a part of their jurisdiction at that point in time. You want that shared agreement with them. You want that shared copyright with them because that's what gives you the protection. They're there to protect you at that point in time because you've got the shared copyright. You are the executor of it. You are the upper hand on it. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I kind of agree with you. But what I do is I'm doing my own affidavits and then doing the form. I'm doing both.
So am I. So, but a lot of folks won't. They won't do their own.
Right. No, a lot of folks won't, and I think that's going to become a test of time to see what happens. I think this is something that we got to test the waters on and see where it goes and see what happens here. I don't think that I think that what we've done here is we've opened up tremendous paths here. I think that what we've done here is given a world of not more than hope. I mean, we've given a world of solutions here and processes to follow. Now, is it going to backfire on us at some point? I don't know. I don't think so.
How could it?
I think that we've got the power of people on our side too.
They've committed the fraud.
Yes, they've committed it. Well, yeah. Well, here's another thing too. I mean, that's another thing as well. You've got these tax shelters that even if these tax shelters were set up in any kind of lawful way, they're not. I mean, they're all based on identity theft and through presumption and everything. So yes, they've committed the fraud. I mean, in terms of MERS, I mean, they're the ones that allowed MERS to happen. The Federal Reserve is protecting MERS, and Treasury is essentially everybody's protecting MERS. Now, is that because they're doing it intentionally, or is that because they're doing it because they don't have the authority to act, because we haven't made the connection, or we haven't given them the authority to act, or they're separated by agency and they don't have that connection? We got to think in terms of that too. I mean, that's a real important point to think of. We think that they're always screwing us, they're always ignoring us, but we have to step back and we got to step out of our box for a minute, and we got to look at the situation and say, wait a minute, is it the reason why they're not doing anything because they're restricted by agency regulations, or what's the reason why? I mean, I think we're too quick to react and say, "Oh, the federal government's all crooked bastards." I think it's a wrong assessment.
No, going in with an attitude that you want them to help is a whole different attitude than going into you're a son of a bitch and that you screwed me. In other words, I agree along those lines. You can always fall back on that a fraud in the beginning. In the beginning is going to be null and void for any kind of contract, and so you can always go back to that from the. So you're right. I agree that maybe trying some of these with utilizing their forms. I just don't do any forms.
I was the same way. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I agree with you. I was the same way. But I mean, as I delve deeper into this, I'm seeing so many forms. And then I look at it and say, okay, it's a bureaucracy at this point in time. It's not all bad. I mean, you got to think, and also too, the copyrights that the federal government has. I mean, they're not. Those copyrights are different than the ones that are being used against us in derivative form from the private side, from the banks, from financial services, from all these other people. So it's two different ways to look at these copyrights. Everybody says, "Oh, it's copyrighted." Well, that's not necessarily bad. It doesn't mean that they're going to. Just because it's copyrighted, it's not necessarily bad. Because, like I said, again, shared copyright. That's a very important point to understand. Is that copyright is huge. It's huge.
But you take control of it, and the whole game changes.
Exactly. I mean, because right now they have proprietary ownership or proprietary overseership over it until the living man comes forward. When the living man comes forward, on the 1790 Copyright Act, I mean, it's changed over the years. It's grown over the years. It's been amended over the years, but it's still statutes at large, and they still pertain. that still very much pertain. If anything, they pertain more because there's more lines of business out there, in a manner of speaking. But when the living man comes forward, he take everything vests back to him, and in the event that somebody has profited profits and gains off of that copyright without that person's express written permission, it's 3 times damages. So what are you doing here? So what you're saying is you're saying, okay, I will go ahead, just close out my accounts and give me all my accounts and let me have the administration over it, and we're done with the situation. Or if you don't want to do that, fine, let's go to court. We'll do tortious interference for 3 times the damages.
Right. Well, let's go way back to 1966 and the SSDK and the implementation of the SSDK trust when the individual came for, when they found that it was a flesh and blood individual came forward, the trust was it was no more, basically.
And that SSDK lives in that 1790 Copyright Act.
Right.
It lives in that, and that's a huge thing. I mean, that reverses everything that the Constitutionalists are doing by running away from the federal government. How can you run away from? How can you disown or spit on the corporation and then come back and say you want no part of it, and then try to come back and say, oh, I want all my accounts? How can you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You got to accept the fact that you're part of. Great, I'm a part of a corporation. Fantastic. I don't want to be a debtor of the corporation. I'm a stockholder. So what are you doing? You're just basically making your conversion, saying I'm not your debtor. I'm not a accommodating party. I'm a transmitting utility. I'm the living party here. I'm the one that puts energy to everything. I'm a stakeholder, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and that's all you're really doing. It's just business. It's It's stocks and bonds. What's the difference between stocks and bonds? That's the difference between that. So it's a simple corporate structure at that point in time, and I could show you I can point to you where these trust agreements are. I can think of one from, and it's all under trademark. One between FDIC, it was FDIC. No, it wasn't FDIC. It was maybe it was FDIC and Treasury. And this is something that we don't even know about. The Home Loan Owners Act, and there's 20 million preferred shares and 10 million common shares, and it's sitting there. And those are shares really that are our shares that are kind of revolving. That they're collecting all the monies on it. Basically, if you want to kind of delineate that and break that out, you can say, well, the common shares are kind of the bottom shares that will be representative of a portion of your Social Security, which of course is being taken and delineated more by the bonds that issue on it. Or you could take the preferred shares, which is your equity shares, which is your executor position. Mm-hmm. It's all shares. You got shares, preferred shares, common shares, and bonds that are administered by warrants that tie the common shares and the bonds together for rollovers.
Just got to know how to access them and how to be able to get them to cut them loose.
Right, and that's the beauty of the tax shelters. That's why I'm so fucking excited about the tax shelters, because that really defines everything for us. It's all right there, and all we've got to do is we got to just make the claims and go for it. I mean, it's there, and fiscal services is there to help us. I mean, all these things are there, and it's a test run. I don't think, and this is going to be different because now we're going at them with full knowledge that we don't have. I mean, if people are throwing these papers into the black hole and hoping Treasury will respond, and Treasury's not responding, or they're doing these indemnity bonds. The thing that bothers me about that is you're kind of tossing it's kind of like pissing in the wind and hope it doesn't blow back on you. I don't want to do that. I want to know. I want to know what's on the other side of that wall. I want to know what they're there for. I want to know where these revenues go and where these chains go. And that's all I've done. Was I just looked beyond the other side of the wall and said, "Oh, okay, this is a great world over here. How do we get there now?"
Yeah. Well, it's a lot to it's a lot to ingest, and
yes.
Are probably I mean. I think that I understand everything of what you've said, and I would like to really look into a lot, because you've touched on a lot of places where I hadn't really gone. So I really appreciate the input. And
my pleasure. Well, and that's the whole thing. I mean, they've everything we're dealing with here understands everything is on intellectual properties, everything, and that's exactly what they wanted to keep us away from. They've done everything they can to make sure that we believe something other, than what it actually is. Because when you get on the intellectual properties and you start ripping these parties on intellectual properties, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: it's so damn powerful. Sit there and say, well, they're not going to entertain that; they're just going to ignore us. I don't think they're going to ignore us because, when you can show somebody, when I can sit down with you or anybody and show you this picture, I mean, it's one thing to sit there and go on and pontificate about birth certificates, and people look at you like they're freaking nuts, right? Because they haven't been experiencing this. If it's a sheeple, but you approach a sheeple and talk about what we're talking about tonight, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. Well, it's it has to be understandable in the context of the disinformation in the respect of just what the education of the American people has been brought to believe. In other words, this is so foreign, and there's so much cognitive dissonance going on that there's a few people that really want to grasp this that have been affected because came after their property, but the people their property hasn't been whatsoever. Those people are completely in this. It's not necessarily sheeple. It just has to do with complete propaganda. And
they haven't been affected by it yet. I mean, I understand it. I mean, I kind of look at it as they're the next. They might be caught up in the next wave. Maybe they'll go a wave after that, but eventually they're going to be caught up in it. They just haven't been caught up in it. And I do understand that. And I envy them at times because I wish I was them. But at the same time, though, I think that it's not like people. Well, I don't know the real world. I haven't seen. I've been out of it for so long. I don't know how people are faring out there. I mean, I don't know if they're struggling. I doubt that many jobs are being created because there's no reason to create jobs because there's no reason to do anything for infrastructure. There's no reason for any of that because they can bleed off of our intellectual properties because of all this virtual world shit and this mini-me's and that's easy money for them. It's easy money to create, so we don't have to do this infrastructure. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of people out there that are struggling and not doing too well who would probably be pretty receptive to this information.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it's been very educational, and I appreciate your time. I'm going to jump off now, though. But
I think it's about time to call it quits for tonight.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anybody else even online yet.
There probably are still. I don't know how many are still on the line, but there were definitely a lot of callers tonight.
Good.
And you have been extremely generous, Ken, with your time, your information, and I know so many of us appreciate it very much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Sorry about that.
My pleasure. I mean, I want to keep on spreading this word. I mean, it's important. It's important.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
So it's my pleasure. I thank you for having me on.
You help a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. Well, let's do this again.
Okay, for sure. Exiting Babylon is every Monday. Next week we have Jackie Fig, who is going to be coming on, and I guess she knows you, Ken.
Jackie Fig. I don't know that name. I don't think I do.
So it's going to be a good show. You definitely want to see that or listen to that one because it's going to be a really good one. And this has been just incredible, though, once again tonight. Ken, thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I know that Ken needs to probably get off, and we will bring him back on again.
Hey, Ken, one question. You mentioned earlier that you needed help linking the attachments or the database.
Well, not so much linking a database, but linking documents together. Like copyrights and trademarks and stuff. That's what I need help.
Yeah, I'm good at that stuff. So this is Tony, by the way.
Okay, hi Tony. Well, I've got.
So let me know if I could help do that from here.
I got a good team to do that with. The problem is that we just can't get together.
You need to get together to do it.
You need to get together to do it, and that's the whole drawback right here. And I just got to be able.
Okay, well, if you need me, I'm good at that stuff, man.
Okay.
I compiled all those the main 5 or 6 patent trademarks that are on our certified.
Okay.
I put them all in one PDF with a title page.
Yeah. Well, what I need to do is
long at all, so that way you can just open it.
Well, I need to have people around me so I could direct them. I say, okay, link this one, link that
one.
Yeah,
because if you could do that, I'm pretty quick at it. I've got this PDF software that is really great.
Okay, yeah, that's what I need. I need about a week's worth of time, maybe even more. But I mean, week's worth of time, hard 24 hours work to get that link, so I get people linking on that, so then I can do the videos that are going to tie all these things together. Because otherwise, it's and my team is right. Otherwise, it's just a database of files that everybody looks at and says, "What the fuck is this?" and I've got to link it together. But
I
don't have time to do it. I got to direct.
You just got to read things over and over, and then let it stow for a while, and when you come back a week later in a different attitude, you read the same thing and you go, wow.
Well, what I want to do is I want to be able to link it. So, like Merrill Lynch, I want to be able to link these patents together with Merrill Lynch, how they tie in with the copyrights and and trademarks. So it's a flowing story, and then it's linked by like a 5-minute vignette, as I call it, of a video. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of information.
It is a lot of information. But what I'm saying is, when you first start reading these things, like you said so many times, you start reading the trademark and the assignments and the security agreements in them, and you don't get it yet, right? And then once you set it aside for a day, and you do some other things, and you come and pick up that same document and you read it again, and you just go, wow.
Yep. And
now you get it. It's just like the brain takes a while to just wrap its head around it.
Yep, and that's what it takes.
That happened to me today. I was like reading some of the documents, that we did. I did, and and by the way, one thing I wanted to say. You said it just a little while ago. You share it with the regular people, and I got such a good response from an older friend of mine, that I hadn't talked to for a while, and I sent him a couple of the documents. Actually, you know what I sent him is the MERS. The title, the first item on the top of the
the MERS Nation Bank Agreement.
Yeah, the Camaro, and he's a car guy, so it totally worked for him, right? And he read it all, and I attached the MERS Nation Bank Agreement to it, and that very night, it was Father's Day. That night, he's about 11 o'clock at night, so he sat up and read the whole thing, and he sent me a really nice email where he complimented you.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. Good.
And he had to admit that he's just a sheeple, and he's really amazed that there's people out there that'll do this, because like you said the other night, people know there's in that, people know there's something, they've always felt all along that there's something really wrong with this system.
Right, but if you're not caught up in it, if you haven't been caught up in it, then, you're not going to give it, you're not going to give it a second glance. I understand that.
And he admits, they just go along to get along, and that, they know that they're getting ripped off, even in regular, transactions.
Well, and that's what I think is nice about this. Because we do have to make the one thing that we have to kill here. We've got to, and this is important, that we've got to kill the fact that because we're if you're fighting for closers, you're instantly isolated because of this deception, because of this idea that we're deadbeats, liars, and cheats and whatnot.
Oh, I felt that.
And we feel that. And that's been the hardest thing. But boy, if we can break that connection, and this is the way to break it. Like you just did it. You just broke it with the gentleman you were talking about. You make that connection with these people, and you get them thinking. That starts breaking down that layer of deception, and that's important because that's what's going to bring this whole thing down, I think. And it's also going to give us a good substance for support to roll through Treasury. So if there's any hesitation on the part of Treasury to deal with us or not want to deal with us for whatever reason, we've got a strong group of support and growing group of support behind us. It's not just people that are struggling with this, but actual sheeple that are waking up to this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking maybe you'd make a little publication with that, the Camaro. You know, just a little pamphlet.
Maybe I wrote that thing
People
so many years
just
ago.
pick it up and go, wow, you know.
Yeah, I wrote that thing so many years ago. It's just like those PowerPoints. I did those PowerPoints like 7 years ago, and people finally are starting to get them. It's like, yay. You know, but yeah, I mean, it's. I'm happy with the way things are going. I'm pleased. I mean, I think that you know, you break down these barriers, and we tell these people, you know, assertively what we know, and you know, go ahead. You want to keep going? Go ahead. It'll come back and bite you. Not today, but
yeah. And I think
soon.
with people with more clerical talents than mine, I mean, heck, I'm a cabinet maker, and so when I get all this paperwork around me, I mean, my back tightens up, and I'm like, you know, putting like this process. Oh my God.
Yeah, but you know what? This is.
Take a breather. You know, I wish I would have. You know, I wish I had a secretary, somebody can help me, like, just organize it, you know, because I get so frustrated sometimes when I misplace something, and I'm like,
that's my biggest problem, is I'll find documents, and now because I can zone in on a document pretty easily, where its importance is and what its placement is, and, you know, I generate so much paper around. That's the thing I just hate. I just generate so much fucking paper.
1, 3.
And a lot of ink.
A lot of ink, yep, a lot of ink. All right, I'm parched.
Keep talking,
call it.
All right, Ken. Thank you again. And
nice talking to you.
Is this thing going to be recorded?
It will be on YouTube, Colorado Prepper, Exiting Babylon. So.
Yeah, because I missed the beginning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right, talk to you later, Tony.
You're welcome.
All righty.
All right, Ken. Well, thank you again, and I'm going to say good night, and we will be on the Marshal's call tomorrow night. So.
All righty. Sounds good. Thank you.
You bet.